And they're coming in. Does anybody have his phone number by chance?
I texted him.
Okay.
Can you send him the link again? He's asking, Rob.
Evan, do you have that handy?
The link? One sec.
Let's see if I can.
All right, I have the public link. Who are we sending it to?
Larry?
I just sent it to, I sent my link, so he might have to just rename himself.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
So for those of you who have joined us, we are waiting for one more member of the board to show up. So we have quorum, and we understand that we lost the link, and he should be joining us shortly. Ah, yes.
Here, sorry.
Hey, Larry.
You know who I don't see is Isaiah. Ah, here we go. All right, Madam Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm gonna open the meeting for the planning board, City of Brockton, December 6th, 2022. First, going to read an opening statement. This meeting is being recorded in accordance with the government order suspension certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Chapter 38, Section 20. Real-time public participation and comment can be addressed to the planning board utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. This application will allow users to view the meeting and send comments or questions to the chair via question and answer function. Submitted text comments will be read into the record. For those of you joining by phone, press *9. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. A copy of this recording will be on the city's web pages. All votes will be done via roll call to ensure account accuracy. Okay, a quick roll call of the planning board members. So Larry Hassan,
Here,
Jim Sweeney,
Here.
okay, and Tony Gonzalez, the chair. Rob, do you want to announce the issue of being down a board member?
Yes, for those of you who are following, the planning board is a 5-member board. And right now we have 3 sitting members that allows us to vote on subdivisions and for site plan review. The issue is that the cases for returned to ZBA require 4 out of 5 votes, because it is a 5-member board, even though there's only 3 currently appointed. So it's a little snafu with the law. And so we're not able to hear those cases. So they will all be continued to January, and hopefully we'll be working with the mayor to get some appointments made. And also, if you're listening at home and you would like to be on the planning board, please send the mayor an email with your resume.
Okay, thank you. So in addition to Rob and his staff, Evan Sears and Isaiah Thirlwell, we have Deputy Chief Edward Williams and Megan Shave. Megan, your position is?
I'm the conservation agent.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will review the agenda for this evening. But first, let me announce, if you are here for return to ZBAs, as Rob mentioned, 1449 Main Street is continued. Return to ZBA 48 North Pearl Street continued. 124 Bradley Ave continued. 159 North Main Street continued. And I think that is all of them, correct, Evan?
That's all, yes. And they'll be continued to January 19th is the January meeting.
All right. Still on the agenda tonight, number 1, open space and recreation plan update. We have a site plan approval for Knapp Center on West Chestnut Street. Applicant is Lynch Towing and the representative is J.K. Holmgren. We have a site plan approval for 680 Center Street. Applicant is Siemens, representative J.K. Holmgren. And then we have a site plan approval for 0 Falmouth Ave. Applicant is West Rochester Village LLC, representative E.T. Engineering Enterprises. We also have a preliminary subdivision, 262 Winter Street, 34 Kent Street. The applicant, Cruz Property Realty Trust, representative William P. Self. And then lastly, definitive subdivision plan for Arthur Estates. The applicant, Rockwood Realty Trust, representative Jacobs Driscoll Engineering. First, we're going to review for the acceptance of the meeting for November 22nd. Did the board members have a chance to review?
Yes, motion to accept.
Second,
Okay, roll call, Larry Hassan,
yes.
Jim Sweeney,
Yes.
Tony Gonzalez, yes. And Evan, no A&Rs, lot releases, or return of surety?
Nope.
Okay. And no street acceptance and no proposed zoning change. All right, did the board members have a chance to review the open space recreation plan number 1 on the plan?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, yes, so if it looks good to you, or if you have questions, any questions?
Is there any quick overview that Rob could give us, just to, briefly, so the public would understand as well, if you wouldn't mind?
I was going to ask Megan Shave, Dr. Shave, to make that presentation.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, so I'm happy to present this draft of the city's 2022 update of the open space and recreation plan. The open space and recreation plan, as a bit of background, it's a framework that was designed by the State Division of Conservation Services in the 90s as a method to guide towns and cities both to take inventory of their existing open space and recreational opportunities, and also to guide their acquisition, development, and management of open spaces, and to further incentivize towns and cities to adopt and update their open space plans. The Division of Conservation Services has made their various grant programs contingent on having an updated open space and recreation plan. So the DCS distributes various open space funds, including the Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities Grant, also known as the Park Grant, which has funded renovations for several parks throughout the city in recent years. So again, in order to remain eligible for those types of funding opportunities, the city needs to update its open space and recreation plan every 7 years. So our last update was in 2013, meaning that it expired in 2020. So since late 2019, I've been leading an open space and recreation plan working group made up of a variety of representatives of various stakeholder groups involved in open space and recreation in the city. So working through the COVID state of emergency, we reevaluated our inventory of open space and recreational facilities. We carried out our public input process, which included a survey that we had up from 2020 all the way through March 2022 that residents could participate in. We originally had in-person input events that were canceled due to COVID. We switched those over to Zoom events. And then when guidelines allowed, we had an in-person event at the Council on Aging and also an in-person event at the NAACP STEM Week, which in particular was an interactive exhibit for kids where they built their own park using various options for adding sports, trees, anything they wanted to our sample park landscape. And so with that, the open space working group put together a list of 8 goals for open space and recreation planning in the city for the next 7 years, and then an action plan which outlines the framework of how the city might achieve those 8 goals. And so at this time, we have a working draft that we have posted to the city website for the public to take a look at. It's accessible through specifically the Conservation Commission's webpage on the city website and also the Open Space Facebook group. You can find the link there. And we are also seeking letters from the various stakeholder groups in the city, including the planning board, to show that the city supports this updated plan to submit to DCS and become our open space plan for the next 7 years.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions? All right, is there a motion?
All right, motion to accept.
Second,
Okay, roll call, Jim Sweeney,
Yes.
Larry Hassan,
yes.
and Tony Gonzalez, yes, thank you. All right, next up,
Thank you,
Nat
Megan.
Center. Is Lynch's Towing JK Holmgren ready to be moved up to a panelist?
I'm gonna move Scott. And Scott, is there anybody else joining you?
Sorry, about that, guys. I believe I'm alone.
You believe you're alone?
Yep.
You're just gonna leave you out there to hang.
As usual.
All right, thank you.
All
Madam
right.
Chair, we're ready.
All right, is Scott gonna put his presentation up?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, good evening. Scott Farrier, Holmgren Engineering, representing Lynch's Towing. To share a screen. Don't suppose you see that.
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Why? A nice color rendering that I'm hoping to share with you folks. not it. There we are.
Well, we can see the title color rendering.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
We can see it now.
If you could close the thumbnail section, it'll make the page a little bit bigger.
Is that,
Beautiful.
thank you for your patience as usual, folks. All right, so what we have is a long-standing project for Lynch's Tone. It's been kicking around City Hall for 4 or 5 years now. Just as a little background, Lynch has his towing operation on Montello Street. And it's directly abutting the MBTA train station. It's kind of been a valuable piece of property that the city has hoped to have it redeveloped into a residential project. That project was approved, again, going back about 3 or 4 years ago by the planning board, by the Board of Appeals, and is pretty close to getting ready to start construction. As part of that approval, Mr. Lynch needed a place for his towing operation. It needs to be within the city limits because of all the towing that he does, not only for the city, for the police department, but for the bus services, state police, access to highway. So he really needed something in Brockton, and he acquired the majority of this piece that we're looking at here on West Chestnut and Knapp Center from the city. We went to the Board of Appeals way back then in 2020. And at that point, we realized that the reason that the site looks a little bit different from all the neighboring sites, it's about a 10-foot hill just within the limits of our property. The reason it's a 10-foot hill is it was used by the city as a solid waste dump, primarily in the 30s and 40s, but even going up to the 60s. And it was primarily used as a solid waste dump to handle debris from a series of hurricanes that we had back then in the 30s and 40s. The site was capped, although not officially with DEP, but it was capped with loam, just allowed to lay vacant. It vegetated just naturally. And then Mr. Lynch bought it 4 or 5 years ago. We started this process. The very first thing we needed to do, because it's a solid waste site, was deal with DEP's Solid Waste Management Division. We've gone through years of work with them. We've come to the point where we have an agreement in principle with DEP, and we're working towards 100% approval, but we pretty much have a blessing from them that would allow us to proceed with this plan here. And the plan is to basically excavate the 10 to 14 feet of debris that's on the site, sift it, to really oversimplify it, come up with a pile of debris and a pile of dirt. The debris will be trucked off, the dirt will be tested, and if it's essentially clean material, it'll be placed back on the site. If it's found to be contaminated, that will also be trucked off site, in which case the entire site will have clean fill brought in. So that's the process that we'll be going through, that DEP is working towards an approval of that process. The final step for DEP to give us their approval is to get city approval. So as part of the site plan process, we need to go to Conservation Commission first. We received an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission for this plan that you see before you back early in November. We filed with them probably in the summertime, went through an extensive review with Beta Engineering, the Conservation Commission's consultant. Beta reviewed the drainage and the stormwater management facilities proposed to make sure we're in accordance with Brockton's guidelines and DEP's stormwater guidelines. As I said, we received their approval in November, which allowed us to proceed with this site plan approval. So the plan is to access the site off of Knapp Center. We have a large building right there, which will be Mr. Lynch's towing facility. In front of his facility will be customer parking. All in the back will be the tow yard, basically his storage for the towed vehicles. There will also be an access out to West Chestnut Street between the AUKUS building and the YMCA. The entire property will be fenced in for security reasons, will be fenced in. We have, you can see the green space that we have proposed around the perimeter of the property. We also have a series of a couple of different drainage areas proposed. We have a couple of infiltration systems that are being proposed and that were approved by both Conservation and Beta. And we also have a surface detention basin up at the top corner, the southerly corner of the property, abutting an existing wetland area. So that is, that's basically the plan, Madam Chair. The plan that you see there, it would provide parking for 504 vehicles, a combination of the towed vehicles and then the customer and employee spaces, but it would be a total of 504 spaces. The entire site, there has been some confusion and some discussion, again, going way back years, in years past, but the entire site will be paved. It's bituminous concrete, blacktop for the entire site that you see in front of you as being gray. So there is no gravel parking proposed. It will be entirely paved.
Okay, good. That was going to be my first question, just to verify it's going to be paved. And it's my understanding, Rob, that these lingering issues regarding the contamination have to be dealt with at the state level and not the planning board.
That is correct. We did receive a memo from the city engineer who was not involved in the Conservation Commission process. And so he did not have any of the state documentation, but they have done extensive testing and design of the facility. And you heard Scott explain how the material will be excavated, sifted, and judged whether or not it can be reused or not on the site. So DEP is going to be extremely involved in the redevelopment of this site.
Okay. Questions from the planning board?
Think I'm good.
All right, how about Chief Deputy Williams?
No, excuse me, the fire department's good.
All right, is this open for the public?
Yes, ma'am, it is. So if anyone in the public would like to make a comment or provide testimony about this project, please use the raise your hand button at the bottom of the screen. If you hover your cursor over at the bottom, you'll see a menu that pops up and you'll see a sign that looks like a hand raised. And that will allow us to identify you and unlock your microphones. And Madam Chair, at this time, I do not see anyone with their hands raised.
Okay, so go back to the planning board. Is there a motion?
We're looking to continue this, correct?
No, we're gonna approve
Motion
it.
to approve with
Okay.
conditions.
Second.
And
So do you want me to read in the conditions? There's quite a
Yeah.
few of them. Okay.
Yes.
hold on, Madam Chair, before you do that, one of the conditions about combining the parcels, we don't need to add that in any longer. That can be taken out.
Okay,
Okay. So motion to approve with the following conditions: approval is subject to and contingent upon final approval of Mass DEP. Copies of the following state permits must be provided: solid waste closure, remediation, and post-closure use. Shade trees will be added to the 4 parking islands on the northeast portion of the property.
Second that.
all right. Excuse me, roll call. So Larry Hassan,
Yes.
Jim Sweeney,
Yes.
and Tony Gonzalez, a yes. Okay, thank you.
you, folks.
Congratulations, Scott.
All right, so next we have 680 Center Street. Again, Scott with JK Holmgren, site plan approval.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Scott Farrier, Holmgren Engineering for Siemens Industry Incorporated. And Siemens has kind of an interesting project looking to put up solar canopies at the existing Signature Hospital on Center Street. Attempt again to share my screen. Well, that's the one we just looked at. You see that?
Yes,
Yes.
good job.
Right, so the bottom of the page is Center Street. Heading up the right side is Libby Street, the left side is Adams Street, the entire campus of Signature Healthcare. So essentially the front parking areas are what they're looking to do. They have a series of 4 canopies, canopy 1, canopy 2 in front of the main entrance. Canopy 3 is down the lower corner between Libby and Center Street. And then canopy 4 over on the side closest to Adams and in Center Street. So there's no changes to the parking lot. Everything's remaining the same. Access, egress, emergency exits, parking spaces, everything's pretty much staying the same. The one thing that we're allowed to do by building these canopies, the first thing is they get to repave these parking areas, which a lot of the
Excuse
parking
me,
areas
Scott?
are in. Yes.
I'm sorry, the drawing that you have up, C4, it's
Yes.
very difficult to see the outline of where the hospital itself is. And I don't know if you have a better drawing for the planning board to take a look at. Maybe C4, okay. It's a little busy, but yes.
That's busy, but again, just as an overview, I guess. So by them building the 4 canopies, they basically get to repave, just overlay the existing parking areas. So that was a big improvement that the hospital was looking to do. That there are a few of these parking areas are in rough shape. So we're providing a canopy. It's basically a covered parking over those 4 parking areas. Because of that, it also gives us the opportunity to do a little bit of drainage improvements on the site. By having the canopies, we're able to capture that rainfall that would be hitting the canopy and sending that into the drainage system as clean water, and basically taking the brunt of the parking lot water out of the drainage system, water that could potentially be contaminated just by the vehicles, in introducing the clean water as opposed to the dirty water from the parking lot. So in order to do that, I'm going to just switch pages for a second, even though it's harder for you to see. In order to do that, we have these red drainage areas that show the roof drainage from the canopies tying into a series of manholes that eventually tie into the existing drainage system out of the hospital. There's a series of catch basins and manholes that currently exist. We'll be adding a large storm scepter unit right here in front of canopy 4. That storm scepter unit provides a great deal of stormwater management benefits that currently don't exist on the site. So it's a great improvement on the stormwater management that's going out there currently. So that's a quick overview of what we're looking for, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Questions from the board?
Are there any other images of anything similar to this that can kind of get a better understanding from a parking lot, picture like that?
Yeah,
I mean,
there-
is there a picture of the apparatus itself, of the, of what it is itself? Of like where it's placed?
Right there at the bottom of this detail sheet, Mrs. Sweeney, is the canopy. in this case, it's canopy site number 3, which is the one closest to Libby and Center Street. It is, make sure I'm giving you the right numbers, but it's about 150 feet long in this distance here, covers the entire, that entire parking lot. And it's about, at the lowest, it is about 14 feet high, and it goes all the way up to 20 feet high. So vehicles will have no problem getting underneath it. Fire trucks will be able to get under and around it with ease. And that is the structure. And it'll cover-
How much snow can it hold on the roof? Does it melt off? Does it hold a certain amount of weight?
It does, it primarily melts off.
Okay, does it
gets
warm?
trapped.
Okay,
Yep, and then, gets caught into the gutters and the downspouts.
okay. All right.
Scott,
So
I see
structurally,
it
there's not an
on
issue.
Adams Street, right? It's not Libby Street. You mentioned Libby Street, but isn't it facing Adams Street?
Adams Street would be canopy number 4, Madam Chair. Just go back to that overview. Right here where I'm moving my cursor around, that would be canopy number 4 at Adams Street.
Hmm.
Libby
And-
Street is over here on the right-hand side of your page.
Yeah, I'm looking at the staff report and I see a different markup, but as long as those that were part of this review, Rob, this is what you know the plan to be?
Yes, it is, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I could, is the power meant to sustain the hospital or to be resold?
It'll be a little bit of both. It'll sustain the hospital, and then the excess gets sold back back out into the grid.
Okay, Larry, any questions?
I'm just making a few notes. Nope, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
So what would be the standard conditions with this, Mr. May?
I knew you were gonna ask. Hang on just a second because I was looking up something on the internet for a solar field. The standard conditions have been met because we have the extra landscaping added in the plan. We are making improvements to the stormwater system, and we've also measured to make sure that the fire trucks and other emergency vehicles will be able to circulate the site without any interference. So I would not put any additional standard or any additional conditions on this plan.
All right. Okay, it says open to the public.
Yes, it is, Madam Chair. So, ladies and gentlemen, anybody wishing to make comment on this, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, and we will unlock your microphone to allow you to provide testimony or ask questions of the board. And at this time, Madam Chair, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion?
A motion to approve with standard conditions.
Second,
Okay, roll call. Jim Sweeney,
Yes.
Larry Hassan,
yes.
Tony Gonzalez, yes. All right, thank you, Scott.
Thank you, folks. Have a good evening. Happy holidays to all.
You too.
Thank you.
Next, we have a site plan approval for 0 Falmouth Ave, Representative ET Engineering Enterprises.
And would the representative please use the raise your hand function so we can promote you to panelist? Evan, do you see the representative there?
I don't. I'm not sure who it is. Let me see if I can find a name.
Would the representative from ET Engineering please use the raise your hand function? Falmouth Ave, please raise your hand. Madam Chair, let's move on to the next item, and maybe they were having some audio-video
Okay.
problems.
So we'll move on to preliminary subdivision, 262 Winter Street, 34 Kent Street. William P. Self is the representative.
Bill Self. And you should be transferring over shortly. There you are, sir. Ted, I'll move over. Or Todd, excuse me, sir.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I just spoke with Mr. Torrey from Falmouth Avenue, and they were expecting to be on about 7 o'clock. He's on his way to the engineering office now. They'll be on very shortly.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Captain Williams. Or Deputy Chief Williams, excuse me. So, Madam Chair, Mr. Self is here to make his presentation.
Okay. If you put your hands up.
Good evening. Bill Self, Curley and Hanson. Along with us this evening is Todd Pilling, the engineer in the project. Also to be joining us here he is Matthew Costa. He's the attorney representing the property owner, Dave Cruz. He'd like to start the presentation. Myself and Todd would certainly, jump in with any technical questions or anything additional we think the board might want to hear about the project. So if Matthew can introduce yourself and take over. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Matthew Costa. I'm with the law firm Gain Gate PC out of Taunton, representing the applicant David Cruz, Cruz Properties. And so what this is a preliminary subdivision application for land off of Winter Street and Kent Street. Specifically, this is a reconfiguration of the parcels 262 Winter Street, 34 Kent Street, and there's a landlocked parcel that's part of this assemblage that's being reconfigured as a residential subdivision. Perhaps Mr. Self, if he could share his screen, he might be able to show the subdivision plan to the board.
Thank you.
If you could, we could try this. If I have any issues, hopefully Todd can jump in on, and he's got them as well.
The total land area involved is about 3 acres. So there's an existing house on 262 Winter Street that has about 2 acres of land associated with it. That's sort of up in the back. It's sort of an unusually shaped lot. There's another landlocked piece that's about 6/10 of an acre. And then there's the house at 34 Kent Street. It's about 1/4 of an acre. So altogether, there's about 3 acres involved. The reconfiguration will allow the extension of Kent Street, where right now 34 Kent Street sort of blocks the end of Kent Street. And there's no cul-de-sac or turnaround at the end of 34, just dead ends.
Mr. Costa,
Yes,
could you hold off for just a second while Bill or Todd brings that drawing up? And I think Bill's having a hard time with that, so maybe Todd can jump in first.
oh yeah, sure, no problem.
Thank you, Rob.
If you don't know this area, it's hard to imagine it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so that's the existing configuration of the parcels involved. And so as you can see, there's the house at 34 Kent Street, it just cuts across the end of Kent. And so the plan is to extend Kent Street to have a cul-de-sac, in accordance with the requirements of the planning board that doesn't exist now. And to create 6 lots with frontage on Kent Street and a 7th lot for the existing dwelling at 262 Winter. Part of this is also that the water line for Kent Street presently dead ends at Kent Street. And so part of this proposal is the water line will be extended along the sort of the extension of Kent Street and then down across to Winter Street. So this will result in the looping of that water line that presently dead ends. And it will also create a turnaround for, emergency vehicles and whoever else that would, travel down Kent Street, where right now the larger vehicles have to, the way it's presently configured, would have to back down Kent Street, and that presents issues with backup alarms and that type of thing. The process that we have, according to the way this procedure has to work in the city of Brockton, the land is in an R1C zoning district, which requires 30,000 square foot lots and 175 feet of frontage. And those of you who are familiar with this neighborhood, I think it's fair to say that the lots in general in this area do not conform with that, but that is the zoning standard. And so we have lots shown on the plan that they fit in with the neighborhood, but they don't quite meet the R1C zoning requirements. So the plan is to obtain the preliminary subdivision approval and then present this plan to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the necessary variances. There's some variances that are needed for lot area, for lot frontage, and for lot width. And if the board would like, we can discuss further the dimensions of these lots. But once the Zoning Board of Appeals, if it approves these variances, then the next step would be to come back for the definitive approval. And at that point, obviously, there'll be a much more involved review of stormwater management and drainage and that type of thing. Although these plans do have quite a bit of detail in that regard, I believe, for a preliminary subdivision plan. So, we think that there's some significant benefit to the neighborhood and to the community from this plan, because it'll result in the cul-de-sac on Kent Street. We'll be able to loop that water line that presently dead ends. And, the area in question, it's sort of like like there was the landlocked piece back there. And right now it's kind of an unimproved area in what is otherwise sort of a kind of a complete neighborhood. So this would, we submit, it would tie in with the existing, surrounding neighborhood and kind of complete this area at the end of Kent Street that's kind of at the presently sort of underutilized and could use some improvement. And so, there's other benefits shown on the plans, like there's some nice landscaping proposed. There's also a hydrant right now at the end of Kent Street. It's actually on 34 Kent Street. So this would bring that hydrant off of private property and actually put it within a public layout. So we're pleased to present this plan. We think it's a very nice plan. And Bill Self, if you have any other details that you would like to speak to, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think in general, I think we had a preliminary meeting, for discussion, and I think you can see that just the improvement of that single lot where 34 Kent is existing, how it was, as it is now compared to much more symmetrical and a much larger lot than it was. That and the other house that was existing out of 262 Winter Street still leaves that with ample area around the existing dwelling itself, and with the addition of the easement certainly help with the services, water pressure, and as you mentioned, for that entire street. Again, it's a dead end. It's not traffic's note, the concern for coming in and out is going to be the same as Kent Street. There's only one Kent down to Bourne Street, and then on to Winter Street would be the most direct way to get there. Again, there are single-family homes. You can see the roadway itself. The drainage would be handled basically taking almost all the water down to this cul-de-sac area and into a drainage area, drainage easement that will be on lot 3 and partially on lot 2. We do note that some of the comments from the engineer was he would like to see it an individual lot. In this particular case, we would like to provide something of that, but it would really take up both, at least one of the lots. We'd lose one of the lots in there, and it's going to be a retention area. We'll have adequate access, as you can see on this plan, roadways down each side and another, throughway in the back portion of it for access and cleaning. It'll be loomed and seeded. We've done these in a couple other subdivisions, and they've worked where the homeowners will maintain them under the easement conditions. So we'd like to sit down, we'll talk to address that with the engineering department as one of his comments. But once we'd like to get to the Board of Appeals and ask for their approval, and then certainly all the items or any items that have concerns brought up through both this preliminary, the review, and the Board of Appeals will be added to the plans under the definitive stage. Again, we feel it's a nice project for the site. Most of the lots in here match or are a little larger than most of all the surrounding lots, as you can see on some of the areas that are noted on the abutting lots.
So, Mr. Self?
Yes, sir.
If you could, for the board, go through the size of the different lots and then let people know what the adjacent lots are size-wise, to show how it pretty much matches the existing area.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Todd, just get me back to that first number, sheet 3 or 4, I believe. That should be good.
That's good.
Down a little bit, Todd, if you would, towards Winter Street, the opposite way. Here we a little more. Yeah, you can see that that most of the lots, if you could just increase that a little bit, most all the lots to the rear are on the back street there. Ardsley, I believe it's Ardsley Circle. Most of them are adjacent lots, adjacent to lot number 1, which is 10,000 square feet, 10,251. The lot to the rear of that is 12,458. The next lot, which is lot 2, 12,931 proposed. The lot directly behind that is 11,161. Going down Ardsley Circle, the next lot, 13,140. And our lot 3 is actually 20,538 square feet. You see that parcel A was requested by one of the neighbors that he'd like to be able to own that property to just give himself a little bit more of a backyard, coming in off of Larson Ave. Moving out towards Winter Street, there's 2 or 3 lots running down Winter Street that, of course, lot 4 being proposed. The existing house that we're creating and leaving as a lot would be 11,814. Lot 5, the 2 adjacent lots on Winter Street, number 268, I believe, is 5,968. And the next one would be 10,924 opposed to, again, lot 5 with 13,500. The lot on the very that would consists of the existing house 34 in itself is 19,000. So the adjacent lot being 14, and I think the other one up towards off of Kent Street is 10,595 square feet. So you see in majority, most all of our lots either, are the same or a little larger than most all of the adjacent and abutting lots. So it's consistent with the neighborhood, something that we know that the boards, both the planning board and the Board of Appeals certainly like to see that it'll be, it's not changing the complexion of that neighborhood.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That's a lot of information. I don't have any questions. The planning board?
Madam Chair, it's Larry. Just on the lot 3 where the retention pond is that going to be an open area or is it fenced off? I don't recall some of these, if it's like a security situation for children or things like that. And who maintains it?
Yeah, right now, the ones that we have put on, we've done one up in on Linwood, off of Linwood Street, that it's maintained by up there. They had formed an association. They maintain everything that needs to be maintained on it, because it's a retention area where you don't have water remaining in it after storm events. It's designed to drain empty. So that's another reason where it's loomed and seeded. The neighbor on lot 2 and lot 3 would both be responsible for some maintenance on each portion of it. In this particular case, it would be mostly on lot 3. But until such time that the city decides to take it over as a public way, to be combined with Kent Street portion, then it would be still maintained as a retention area. We found that a lot of times is if they're loomed and seeded and they drain dry, then you don't have the collection of rubbish. You don't have things blowing around. If we found if it's fenced, certainly if it was a retention area where it didn't drain, then it would be a safety factor. This way, people actually maintain it as part of their yard and they keep it landscaped.
Okay, thank you for correcting me on that. So I think a lot of times the abutters, have concerns about that, or even the people that would be purchasing in there. And they're pretty easy to maintain. So just, it's like a landscaping kind of a maintenance type of an issue that a homeowner would do.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only real maintenance that depending on the sedimentation buildup, you'll see there's a sedimentation forebay. Everything coming directly off the street would be put in that forebay, and then that leaches in to the overall storage area again during a certain storm event. When it stops raining, the water drains out, to the bottom, dry. So you remain still having just a seeded area, that would be maintained, mowed, that type of a situation.
Thank you. That's all I had. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
Madam Chair, if I could, as far as utilities, do we plan on putting those underground?
Yeah, for the most part, they're all underground from the end of Kent Street coming through. As far as the electric, they'll tell us where they want them, where the pull boxes, things like that.
Okay.
Same thing if we had an opportunity for gas, they pretty much, show it where they want it. So
All right, so there'll be no poles on this cul-de-sac.
they are not proposed. If for some reason that the utility company changes that reason, then that I don't think they would, but it's all designed for underground.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So
Is this open to the public, Rob?
Yes, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody who would like to make comment on this project, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. And just to let people know, again, this is the preliminary subdivision. It will then, if it's approved by the planning board, it goes to the zoning board of appeals for another public hearing. Yay. And the zoning board will determine if the lot's size and frontage are worthy of a variance. If they are, then they come back to the planning board for a final definitive subdivision. And at this time, I do not see anyone with their hand raised. Oh, yes, here we go. Representative Dubois. And Representative, your microphone should be unlocked.
Wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I just have a couple questions. Can I ask what brings a preliminary subdivision before you? What is? That's my question. What brings a preliminary subdivision before you? What's the purpose of a preliminary subdivision? Is it here for a reason? Is it one of those things where they went to the zoning board and were denied and have to come back within 3 years? Or is it something different? What is it? I have no idea.
No, under the state subdivision law, and I apologize, I can't quote it right off the top of my head, but I think it's, well, I'm not even going to try to quote it off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But there's a citation that I'll send to you tomorrow. There are two different forms of subdivision. The preliminary form allows the board to review the plan in a little bit more detail and to provide the zoning board with some level of comfort that the project has been reviewed. It then has a specific time period. I think it's 145 days after the preliminary subdivision in which it has to be approved as a definitive subdivision. So
Or
it's
not
not like,
approved, or it has to be approved?
or
this-
it needs to be acted upon.
Okay, okay. And at what point does like a city engineer or someone of that sort, unless there's someone on this board, look at this to just take a look before you pass it to the zoning board with some assurances that their variance is gonna be okay for like flooding and stuff like that? Has
The
someone,
city engineer has, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
you didn't?
The city engineer has been involved in the review of the plans.
Right, and what issues did he find? I saw some letter and I'm just trying to understand it. What issues did he find in his letter? There was some letter in the documents about,
Evan,
About
do you have that?
I'm gonna look right now. Give me a second.
I should also let the public know that just having a definitive subdivision or a preliminary subdivision does not mean that they can begin to build anything. It's just a paper plan that shows that it's been reviewed by city and the planning board.
Rob, if I could jump in for one quick second.
Yes, sir.
We did see the letter from Chiquita, your city engineer, and the few points that he brought up, certainly we went over. And once we get a permission from the Board of Appeals to be able to actually physically come into the plan board with a definitive subdivision submittal, all those issues will be addressed as well. So he just had a couple of minor things, you know, that he brought up for us to take a look at. All those issues will be taken care of, as well as you know, all the neighbors being, you know, certified notifications, and to be able to come to both the Board of Appeals hearing and that definitive subdivision hearing.
have they been invited to this meeting?
Under the preliminary subdivision submittal, they're not required to be notified. It's really for the planning board to review and to make recommendations so we could add to and then come back with a definitive submittal addressing all those concerns.
Okay,
and this
so this time around, if a resident, have you already spoken to residents about the number of lots that you're proposing in their neighborhood?
Yeah, in this particular case, we've had two separate over the last couple of years. We've had two separate on-site meetings with invited abutters. Councilor Lally had thankfully sent out, anyone who wasn't abutter wanting to come down and attend our, we call them neighborhood meetings, but we do that on all the subdivisions. Try to get info from the neighbors. We know, what the basic concerns are, and if somebody's, comes forward and addresses something, we certainly try to incorporate it in our design.
Oh, that's great.
Again,
When did you have those meetings?
they were the first meeting we had when we first started the project a couple of years ago, and then we had one. I want to say within the last 7-8 months. Basically, all the plans that the planning board has in front of them is what we showed the neighbors. We had it open, an open site meeting right there at the end of Kent Street.
Oh, that's great. So I appreciate that. So Rob, can you please follow up with me and tell me so I can look in to see about this notification and the fact that the people in the neighborhood weren't notified of this preliminary subdivision? I'd like to just see that for myself. That
I'll
there
send you
wasn't
the
a notification standard for that.
I'll send you the citation for that tomorrow.
I'd appreciate that, just so I can feel more comfortable and maybe look to change the law so that I know that they're notified. But I do respect that you had these community meetings, and I really do appreciate that you did that. That's always the best way to go. And my only concern is that up off of North Quincy Street, we have this subdivision, and you guys all know it, and it's still in the development stage, some 10 years in. And the drainage basins there are supposed to be managed by, is it the homeowner? Is it the association? Is it the person that's developing it? And it's not, doesn't seem to be as easy as it's portrayed. And so I'm just concerned with water. So in this area, there's just been a lot of development, and this represents a lot of more pavement. And I understand that, the road can be extended, and I'm not opposed to this, but I am very concerned with the water issue in this whole area of the city. It's a lot of blasting that's going to go on. There's all granite up there. I know everybody comes before these boards and they say, no, there isn't, but there always is, and there's always blasting. And so at what point are those concerns of the neighbors for this gigantic amount of construction that's going to be taking place taken into consideration in their quality of life over the potential next 10 years? Because what we see in Brockton, with all respects to every single person presenting this evening, what we see in Brockton are developers that get easy permits and then they leave them open for years, and the neighbors that may have been very friendly at this initial meeting become sick sometimes. We have an illegal transfer station with toxic material not too far from here that was supposed to be a sports complex. And I just really caution this board and every board of the city of Brockton to look around and see the devastation and the unfulfilled promises that these very pretty designs pretend, because I have to deal with the residents when, like up on Quincy Street, there's a 20-year, 15-year-old project that's still construction debris in and out, hours of operation non-defined, people getting sick, roadway issues. So, I mean, I just want to tell the board, this seems like a very big project for a small space. And I caution you to use all of your powers to make sure that this isn't gonna go the way of so many other projects that we're facing in the city right now to the detriment of the residents, because you guys approve things and then I have to deal with residents calling me that their kids are getting sick, that toxic materials are being brought onto the site, that they're worried about their children, and then I gotta deal with city officials that tell me it's always been that way, it's fine. And then we find out from the DEP 9 months in that it was never fine. So I just want to caution you all to be as careful as you can with other people's property values and other people's children's health. Because we have a lot of development, and with all respects to every single person on this development project, I have every faith that you have the best intentions, but it seems like time and time again, our boards are not strong enough for the developers that are coming to us, with all respects to everybody at this board. And so in my mind, that puts a responsibility, a heightened responsibility on the city's boards and the board members to really stand up and, you know, have some backbone and demand protection for our residents, because I have residents all over the city of Brockton calling me, feeling like their children are getting sick and that they've been having their property values diminished during a time that they're senior citizens and they want to sell their property and maximize their own return. But because the boards are approving development that never gets finalized or is done in such a manner that it decreases their property values, and they cannot sell their properties when they want to, when the market is high, which is literally depreciating their
Hello?
economic, you know, they've invested in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just very, I'm cautious. I'm very skeptical. I'm very skeptical of the backbone and the abilities of our boards to keep a track on these developments. And I don't know if it's happening in other cities, but I'll tell you, it's happening in Brockton, where I don't think our permitting of our city and our making sure that these projects are really tight is really respecting the residents that have to live around them. I mean, you just have to look up on Quincy Street. We have people's property values ruined for the last 10 years. They can't sell their house for the $500,000, $600,000 they should sell it for, because they're living next to an open pit strip mine that the city has allowed to be that way for 10 years. So what you're approving today, or what you're moving on, I just caution you from now on, Brockton is a place where people want to move. We're not beggars. We need to demand proper development. Develop all you want. I don't care. But it has to be proper, because I'm the one that has to deal with the phone calls, and my whole office seems like it is a hotline for residents. That's what my office does. We answer calls from residents who have to deal with the ramifications of the permits that come through the city boards without protections for them. So I don't know what protections need to be put in here. I'm not an engineer. I am not an expert in development or planning. But what I'm telling you is I'm seeing the kickback at my office from people that say they're sick, their property values, they can't sell them. So I'm asking you to be as strict as possible, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We heard you loud and clear. Thank you for that. If I do say so, we do have, you know, our city engineer that advises us and looks at these plans along with our city electrician, like all the contractors, the permits. We have to put trust into these folks that work for the city. So, you know, we're just not foolishly passing things, but thank you for your time tonight. Anybody else from the public, Rob?
Oops, sorry. If there's anybody else from the public who would like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand function. I see Deputy Chief Williams. You can just
Okay.
speak, sir. You don't have to.
I wanted to try it. I never did it before.
Oh,
Bill, what is the total length of the cul-de-sac from?
I believe from the end of
800
It's
feet.
about 600 feet.
It's 800, isn't it?
But that's all the way down to the,
Oh, yeah, 400 starts at the end of Kent now, and then we
yeah,
go.
on our profile sheet, on sheet 7, Deputy Chief, you can see it's about 400 feet, 450 feet. What you see as included, our profile shows it going up somewheres up a little bit, just so we could show the drainage that's existing on Kent Street. So you can see right there where the existing improved Kent Street ends. It comes all the way down.
Okay,
You
so
can
the
see
entire,
here, it's four,
subdivision is about 800 feet, not subdivision, but the entire street from where it starts to the end of the cul-de-sac?
yes, yeah, that's about 350 feet from Bourne Street. And if you go all the way down the end, if you slide that back a little, Todd, you can see it's down here on our profile. It's down here it's 800 feet. So you got
Okay.
350 down to, that's 450 feet, but that's from the existing drainage up there.
Okay, thank you. And am I seeing this correctly, that you took the water line from Kent, you're running it through the backyard at 262 Winter out to Winter Street, so you'll have a loop line?
Yeah, that's correct. At the very end of Kent Street now, there is a hydrant. It's actually within the property that is actually 34. That'll be relocated, off from where it is now. It'll be put back, to match the profile in the plan section, plan view. And then we have another hydrant down at the end of the cul-de-sac. From there, it'll go down the side yard of number 262. And we'll be able to tie that into the existing water main on Winter Street, giving you the closed loop.
You're a good man. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Can you put that plan back up quickly, please, Mr. Self?
It was Todd that's controlling it.
Yeah, Todd.
Thank you. So where is the piece of property that the abutter is supposed to be purchasing on this plan?
It's
Get to the dwelling.
shown in the very end. It's about 320, 3,200 square feet. The direct abutter, it's Laswitz Realty Trust. He's an owner. He's lived there for a long time. He grew up down in that area. He had early in the process asked us if it would be possible for us to get some type of a small piece to be able to add to his rear yard to give him a little bit more luxury, and privacy type of a thing. We know him through other working projects, and the owner was of the project we're doing was more than happy to accommodate him.
Okay. And the report I have says that this is going to improve drainage in the area for not only the area, but the neighbors. During your meetings with the neighbors, did you hear of any issues with water drainage or?
Yeah. If you looked at the plan right now, all the drainage from Kent Street, all the way from Bolton, all the way down, which is about 300 feet. It goes into 2 catch basins at the bottom of Kent Street. And then it goes out through a drainage and sewer easement that drains out in gravity feed out to Arcadia Circle. And one of the first things we did when we started the project was we did request the DPW to come out, which we always like to do, working with the department. And we asked them if they could go out and take a look and make sure that some of the neighbors said once in a while you'd get clogging. Now, we weren't sure whether it was just because there was, leaf mulch and things like that on the grates of the catch basins, but they actually went in, cleaned it all out and inspected it. We met them down there and everything seemed to be in good working order. Again, this the water that we're using we'll be picking up on the new portion of the roadway. That'll be, it'll be, instead of going all the way across our property down towards Ardsley Circle, because of the actual elevations, in the flow of the land. We'll actually be kind of intercepting that, putting it in our street drainage to be able to drop it into that same drainage area, but at a much lower rate, therefore not increasing in any drainage going in there. But it really to us, we're delaying or slowing down a lot of the water that goes there now to the adjacent properties.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve with standard conditions.
Second,
Roll call, James Sweeney,
yes.
Larry Hassan,
Yes.
Tony Gonzalez, yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you, and to
You're
the board,
welcome.
thank you.
It has ET Engineering arrived to go back to Falmouth Ave?
They have, yes.
Okay.
Okay, ET Engineering, if you raise your hand so I can see you.
Could be Azu and Andy. I promoted them already, but.
Oh,
there we
okay,
go. They're
thank you.
coming over.
All right. Thank you, Azu.
Okay. Well, good evening. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. Thank you for indulging us. We were having a little bit of technology issues. And I have with me here Steve Torrey. Steve is the owner of the property as well as the applicant. Rob, am I able to share my file
Yes. Yes, you should be able to show your screen. Is Andy Sargent part of your presentation?
He's about his son's indoor basketball game.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
he's in the room and I didn't know if you wanted him to promote
Oh,
him
yeah.
up.
Yeah, allow him to set in. I knew he was at his son's game, so maybe he's participating from there.
Okay, maybe he is. We'll see. And you should be able to share your screen now, sir.
Okay. Okay, 1 minute. Okay. Oh, no, it's not over. Okay, 1 minute here. Stop sharing, so share screen, share. Okay, Chrome sheet Windows. Chrome tab. Okay. It's not opening up. Okay, let me see. Shit.
We're getting somewhere.
Azu, you've muted yourself.
Okay, what was that showing?
You're showing now.
Is my screen showing?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. But I can't even see. Okay. Okay, so What we have, members of the board, is an existing property. We are calling it 0 Falmouth Ave. But it actually comprises of 3 parcels that are owned by Mr. Torrey through his LLC. What we have is an existing dwelling, multifamily unit at number let's see here. 20 West Rosetta Street, and it contains 16 units. That is to the southerly portion of the property. And then to the northwest of the property, right up here, is an existing 2-unit building at number 30 Falmouth Avenue. And then what we have here to the northeast is the proposed 3-unit townhouse use. At the street side of the project is where we have the access to the 3 units. What you're seeing here in this area here, where I have my test pits, we done some test pits to establish where the groundwater is so that we could do the drainage system. So right in this area here, we have an underground recharge system that takes care of the 100-year storm event. All the roof drains will come down the roof downspouts and into this.
Excuse me, as I don't see your cursor where you're pointing. Does anyone else?
You see it right now? Where it's almost like I'm rotating it. Right here.
I do not.
I don't see it
don't
either.
see that either.
Pardon me?
Could you make the document a little bit bigger and maybe
Okay.
see your cursor at that time? Okay, I see his finger.
Yeah, I see your finger now. Okay.
Okay.
And now it's
Okay,
gone.
right here. Oh,
Okay, there you go.
Ah, I see it. I see
There
it.
it is.
okay. So this right here at the what you see in blue.
I'm sorry,
or what
it's
we
gone
call-
again, but okay, so the area in blue, if you could try to make this a little bigger. and-
Okay. Okay.
And maybe if you keep jiggling the cursor.
Okay. Is the concept showing up? Right here. You see the blue area where it says proposed 54 by 30?
Yeah, see the blue area,
Okay.
yes.
Yes, okay, so those are the, and then I have dashed lines between them. So those are 3 units that we are proposing. Right up here, where you see the orange color, right over here, you see it?
We see the orange.
Okay, so those are right under those, okay, is our recharge system. So the downspouts are connected to it. And the actual orange that you see is where we're directing the pavement runoff, so that the pavement from the driveway actually goes into a surface swale. Okay, it's a grass area that is designed to filter any nitrates, any runoff-borne sediments, and it will filter that out and then drains, percolates into that recharge system. And then any overflow will then be piped over, go over to the street. But we designed the recharge system underneath that those orange areas. We designed that to recharge the 100-year storm event. And then well, we have water service is the blue line. You can see that blue line on the street that says shows a blue line, and it shows a W in between. That is the water main. And then to the easterly side, northeasterly side of that orange, a cluster of the orange that we're using for drainage, you see the line that's a label that says C-2, C2 zone. And then to the left of that, it says R-3 zone. You'll see the proposed 3-inch ductile iron water line that we're proposing to provide water to the site. Obviously, the town sewer, the city sewer is available. We have ample parking. We meet the parking requirement, on-site parking. And gas will be provided. Steve said, reminds me that it's not gonna be gas. It's all heat pumps. Heat pumps. Okay, thank you. So we went to a tech review. We had a tech review with our city officials, and I believe we answered their questions, and then they directed us to come to the board for the board's blessing. And so I think that sums up the project. And I will entertain any questions or comments from the board.
Okay, questions from the board?
Madam Chair, it's Larry. Just, Azu, do you have another sketch of like what any yard space looks like on there? Because it looks like a little tight for any kind of yard space at all.
Okay, so thank you, Larry. If you look at all the areas that we show as green, we have all the green spaces actually highlighted right across throughout the property. Now, if you go to the left, I'm going over to the left here, you see this. If you look at that, the required green space is 35%.
But not much behind the building,
existing
right?
is 41%. And yeah, we have a total of 36% as required.
Oh,
by
okay, I
zoning.
see it now. All right, I'm seeing your designation there. Okay. It's just your,
Yes, sir.
can you just lower that plan a little bit? Because we're, from my view right now, I'd like to see
Okay.
that.
Okay, so I'll zoom out a little bit.
Yeah. And can you bring it down a little bit so I can see more of Falmouth Ave?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Right
Okay,
there.
that's good. That's good. All right, so I see your area. So the 36.2 be from the back of the building to the existing building
Yes, sir.
on West Ross. Okay. And
Yes,
that
sir.
existing building on West Ross, that's not a very old building at all either, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Jim?
I think I'm all set.
Okay. Public, Rob?
Ladies and gentlemen of the public, if you have any questions or would like to offer comments, please use the raise your hand icon at the bottom of your screen. If you just hover over the bottom, you'll have a menu pop up and we'll be able to see that. And Madam Chair, at this point, I do not have any questions.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to approve with standard conditions.
Second,
Okay, roll call. Larry Hassan,
Yes.
Jim Sweeney,
yes.
Tony Gonzalez, yes. Right, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
You too. All right, moving on
Thank you.
to Arthur Estates. This is a definitive subdivision plan. We have Jacobs Driscoll Engineering.
Did you grab them? You grabbed
Yeah, they're
them
coming
already?
over.
Okay. Attorney Nesrela, is there anybody else on your team? in
Yes, I
addition to
believe
Fred?
Jason Kennedy from Rockwood is here, Mr. Greg Driscoll and Ed Jacobs.
there's
I'm not
Mr.
sure if
Kennedy.
Amanda or Langer is with us, but basically the engineers and the applicant developer is on. If I may, Madam Chairman, Mr. May, as a brief overview, we received a staff report today from Evan, which the engineers will address. We do not believe that interrupts the plan. It's of minimal consequence that can be addressed, or if it has to be addressed, Greg
Ready?
Driscoll will speak to that. And we would also be requesting a waiver of the roadway requirement. And I think hopefully you'll agree, as well as Deputy Chief Williams, that what we propose will create a better roadway with a better cul-de-sac for turnaround and will implement itself much better within that neighborhood than what currently exists. With that being said, I would ask if Mr. Driscoll, Mr. Jacobs would like to take it from this point.
Sure, I'll jump in. So Greg Driscoll of JDE Civil, representing Rockwood Realty Trust. Jason Kennedy tonight here for the subdivision project. So what Rockland Realty Trust is proposing to do is to extend, and actually, as I start to talk, I should probably share my screen.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so here's the plan. Okay, so what Rockwood Realty Trust is proposing to do is to extend the existing dead-end street, that's Arthur Street, to create a cul-de-sac and create frontage for two lots. Lot 1 stops right there, and lot 2, which goes all the way up to here. And then remaining land of will just stay as an undeveloped parcel. So it's about 150 feet to the center of the cul-de-sac that's being added in, creating lots. The site is currently comprised of 3 lots. There's a lot here, this lot here, and then this larger lot here. So Arthur Street currently dead ends right here with no turnaround. No means to turn around. The proposed cul-de-sac will be an improvement for the neighborhood by allowing fire trucks, delivery trucks, garbage trucks to have a place to turn around and head back out. Let's see, so we are located in an R1C zone, and the parcel is located off of the Arthur Street is located off of Sawtell Avenue. So here's a larger map of the area. Here's Sawtell Avenue. Arthur Street goes all the way down from Intervale, ends right here. These are the parcels that we're working with. So head back to the plan. So the grade of the of Arthur Street pretty much goes up all the way up to here. So that way the high point right here will be the cul-de-sac. Everything will drain down to the existing roadway, along the existing gutter lines to the existing drainage system within Arthur Street. We're proposing typical erosion controls, construction entrance here, stockpiling areas and everything outside of the conservation area. We've already been through conservation with this project for the road extension and lot 2. Per the order conditions with conservation, this house lot here already has a roof system designed for roof infiltration. And we'll be doing a soil testing at the time of construction per that approval. And we'll be extending the water line where it ends in Arthur Street up to the cul-de-sac and adding another hydrant at the end. Details and information on that is included in these plans. And we're also extending the sewer line up to the cul-de-sac and then new service lines out from there. This is the plan and profile of the project of the road extension. So showing the existing sewer and water and gas line being extended up Arthur Street for the post subdivision. We're showing the typical roadway sections and details, the construction of the road, fire hydrant connections, utility extensions, erosion control during construction, and information from the conservation filing regarding wetland replication areas. So, is there anything I missed? Any guys from the team, Ed or Bill or Jason? So
So
that's,
there's an, Greg?
Mhm.
There is a existing spring
yes,
or well on the site. Could you let the board know what you're doing to close that?
yeah,
'Cause
so
it is a recorded water source at this point.
yeah, and that is the paperwork to discontinue that is has been started. It'll be filed with DEP once we know the project's permitted, and that is subject to Mr. Kennedy purchasing the property from the seller. So this project is this property is under agreement, subject to permits, which happens a lot with development. So the seller is the owner of the spring water company. This right here is the tank building, and this building right here is the building that has the cistern for the well. It's currently closed and capped off. So I might have saw that on the last page of the plan set. So this is the existing overflow from the spring. The spring has been there for hundreds of years, I'm sure, and it just flows out this way. This stainless steel structure over the spring has been placed there to prevent anybody from trying to drink the water from the spring. This existing well house will remain. Inside there, the cistern will be capped off and locked. And as I said, the paperwork and filing to decommission officially the water source is pending. It will be done.
And I'm sure that if the board were to approve this, the decommissioning of the well would be a condition of the approval.
Yep, and we can provide the documentation showing that that's done as a condition as well.
Rob, do you want to elaborate on the drainage requirements and I guess there's a new board to deal with the stormwater ordinance?
So under mass stormwater regulations, subdivisions of 4 or less units are exempt from the stormwater regs. And in that case, in what we're talking about in the stormwater regs, we're talking about providing drainage for the roadway itself, not the individual properties. The city has a new stormwater ordinance that is triggered whenever there is excavation. And so while the planning board has jurisdiction over the roadway layout and the utilities, and has to deal with the exemption of the four housing units or less. The stormwater ordinance is another board. And so if the planning board were to approve this as it is tonight, and that's if, then you would, of course, need to go to the stormwater board to get a stormwater permit. And if the stormwater board made amendments to the subdivision plans by adding more catch basins, you would just come back for an amended subdivision to show the new catch basins in the new road segment.
So if the board were to pass this, it would, a condition would be to have the stormwater authority.
They would need a stormwater permit from the stormwater authority. Yes. And if that stormwater authority's permit altered the topography or the added new utilities in the street extension, then the subdivision plan would have to be amended to show those new improvements, because that's what gets filed with the county recorder.
Okay, thankful for these experts to help us, guide us in these plans. Any other questions?
It's a bit hairy at the moment, trying to figure out this. Who do we have on the panel?
Any other questions from the board? Oh,
I got Eddie Jacobs has your hand up. Why? Oh, there. Go ahead, Mr. Jacobs. Unmute yourself. Mr. Jacobs,
you're muted.
you're muted. Unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear
There
me
you
now?
go.
We can.
Okay, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. And Greg touched on them a little bit, but Arthur Street right now from Sawtell Avenue to its terminus is 1,300 feet long. And so people that are coming up to the end of the street, even, you know, halfway up the street, especially delivery trucks, emergency vehicles, have to back all the way down. And there's vehicles parked a lot of times on the side of the road, so it's really dangerous. By us requesting the waiver for extending a roadway that's already over the dead end length, it's actually a benefit to the neighborhood. It'll be a safety issue. It'll relieve a safety issue by letting the fire engines, emergency vehicles, and delivery trucks, trash trucks, to turn around in that cul-de-sac and come back down. As of right now, the city trash trucks have an agreement with the landowner to leave the gate open. There's a gate there right now at the terminus of Arthur Street. And he leaves the gate open right now so that the trash trucks can go up in the gravel area and turn around and go back down. And another thing I wanted to touch on is the well is no longer active as far as producing water to sell. It's been contaminated. And so that's why that silver stainless steel cover is on the overflow pipe, is so that people won't be filling up the bottles like they used to do, you know, because the water is contaminated. And that's why the well is being discontinued. And a couple of other things I just wanted to do to assuage the neighbors that they brought up during the conservation meeting was Ridge Street will never be developed, constructed. Those were some concerns that some neighbors had. And also some of the concerns were that Arthur Street would be extended even further and not be a dead end and be some sort of cut through. That's not going to happen. And I think that's about all I wanted to bring up. We are asking for a waiver for the extension of the dead end length, and we're asking for a waiver for a sidewalk all the way around the cul-de-sac on both sides, because currently there's only a sidewalk on Arthur Street on the south side of the street. So we are asking for that to be continued all the way up until it meets the walkway and driveway of Lot 2. So both houses would have access to the sidewalk and get onto the existing Arthur Street and down to Sawtell. And I believe that's all I wanted to add.
Could you tell us the size of those lots? What's the area for lot 1 and 2?
Yeah,
And
so.
Bill, what's the frontage for lot 1 and 2?
Yep, I did want to bring that up, Rob, because this is one of the rare instances you'll have in front of you recently that
Yes.
both of these lots are actually by right. So lot 1 is 32,735 square feet with 185 feet of frontage, a little over. And lot 2 is 53,250 square feet. So it's almost an acre and a quarter, and the frontage is 205.4 total frontage. And
Thank
Greg
you,
had
sir.
mentioned the well house was going to stay, and I just, that if you look at this plan right here, it's that small small square building that Greg's circling right there. That'll stay on lot 2. And there's no reason why that lot wouldn't be able to use that well as an irrigation well if they wanted to.
Could you just repeat the waivers that you are requesting?
We're requesting a dead end length waiver from the 700 feet because the road is already just north of 1,300 linear feet from Sawtell. And we're asking for a sidewalk on one side because there's only 2 houses on the street and would service those 2 houses adequately without wrapping it all the way around the cul-de-sac to end into the woods.
And the dead end length waiver is 700 to what?
Well, it's currently 1,300 plus to the terminus now. We're adding 150 feet to it. And as I mentioned, I think it's a benefit to the neighborhood to put a cul-de-sac there. So delivery vehicles, city vehicles, emergency vehicles will have a turnaround now and can drive back down the street in safety.
Okay. And so I'm just not clear on the length again. You said 700, then you said 1,300?
Nope, the maximum length of a dead end street in Brockton is 700 feet. So if you go over that, you have to ask for a waiver. So right now, the street existing is 1,300 lineal feet from Sawtell Avenue to the terminus. So we're adding another 150 feet to it, that's all.
Okay, questions from the board?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Larry. Can we, I'm not seeing on my screen the back end of lot 2, where I believe there's some conservation on that lot, and it abuts with properties that were built a couple years ago on North Carey Street.
Yep,
Just
that's where,
curious to get a little bit more, which the back end of lot 2 is what I'm looking at.
yeah, see where it says Norwell formerly CLM development?
Right,
Right there. Those are the lots that were just developed.
right.
Yep.
Okay, so I see a 100-foot buffer line there on the back of lot 2.
Yep.
And what's running behind all that? What is that? Again, I'm not an engineer, so I'm looking at,
In between the 2 green lines where Greg is moving his cursor right now,
Right.
that's an intermittent stream.
okay,
And as we said, we've gotten Concom approval,
right,
and we're showing the 25-foot no touch. All of our work on lot 2 is outside the no touch.
because I have the obvious stupid question. When this well is declassified with Mass DEP, why does the housing of it stay there? Is there a reason why? I mean, because if there's something that needs to be corrected or something over time, I'm just unclear why it actually stays there.
Well, the tank and the pump house is coming down. That
Okay,
rectangular building,
Okay.
that's coming down. The well house, we had thought about that. The well house, so that has a cistern underneath it, and the water does, through pressure come up, and there's a 2-inch overflow pipe that runs across and down towards Ridge Street and out the head wall. Greg can show you. See it right there, yeah.
Mhm.
So from the well house, there's a 2-inch overflow that comes down to that head wall, and that's where that stainless steel box was. So there's got to be overflow. There's always been overflow from the well.
right,
From
uh,
the spring, yeah, it's a natural spring that's always
From
been
the
there.
spring,
so.
right.
Okay.
So we could have taken the well house down and the cistern would have been there. We would have had to put a manhole on it and, put a lock on it. So the developer decided to keep it because it's a really nice building. It's solid brick. And it would be more safe, I believe, to have that well house there with a lock on the door and the cistern inside of it.
Okay.
Eddie, you don't have an actual picture of the cistern, do you?
I don't think we have it on our plan.
Because what the public should think about is that this is a hole in the ground
Well, no,
with a cover over it.
no, it's inside of that building right there.
Right, inside that building.
Right.
Is a hole.
Well, it's a cement floor, and then there's a manhole cover with the cistern, you know, covering
below
the
that.
cistern, yeah. So we have agreed with the Conservation Commission that cistern cover will be improved and locked. Because right now it is just a plate, yeah.
I'm all set for now. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Jim?
Yeah, I think you answered questions that I had.
Okay. And
Madam Chair,
I was just gonna say with the cul-de-sac Deputy Chief Williams.
thank you. Couple of questions. How big is the cistern in gallons or?
Do you know that, Jason, or is Ed Rose on? I can answer that. Give me to Jason.
I don't know the gallons. I think Ed Rose from Rocky Mountain Spring Water could speak to that. We are not changing the gallon flow per day when he shut this well down, it's been overflowing the same amount since that time, which I believe was about a year ago. And that's why he started the declassification with the DEP, which is how they got the stainless steel cover on there. The cistern that Ed's talking about is a roughly 2.5 to 3 feet wide inside that brick building. And yes, we did consider taking the building down, but it's actually a lot safer and it'll be better for a potential end user to have that building and maybe even use it as an irrigation well if they desire. And it's also less impact within the 25-foot buffer area by keeping the building. So that's one of the agreements we came to with conservation.
Okay, thank you. No, I was just wondering if it's a 500,000 gallon, would give me an idea of how large it was.
He said it's 500 gallons.
Okay, 500 gallons. Okay, thank you very much. Any way that even though Ridge Street's not being built out, is there a way to bring a water line in and loop that water line on Arthur Street so that we have a almost full loop of the water system? Because it's kind of hard, we're pumping water up into up the hill, and the more water pressure we could have would be better if we could loop that in.
If I can speak to that, I know we can't go to the Bellevue side because we will not be able to cross the wetlands. Working with conservation, they were very clear about that. So I know that area would not be an option, and I don't know the options of connecting to Merton, but we weren't really intending to do any additional work outside of the yellow limit of work area. So I'm not sure where we would potentially loop into a main.
Okay. My only thought process that, you're looking for waivers, but if you could help the city out and help us loop the water line and improve water pressure, that would have been nice. The other thing is, Madam Chairman, we started this up in the west side of the city. If we're going beyond the 700 feet that we have for the dead end streets in the city, even though this is 13 and they're only going another 150 feet, I would request the board consider requiring the 2 house lots on Arthur Street to be sprinkled with a residential sprinkler system like we're doing on the west side.
Okay.
A fucking joke.
What kind of joke?
You are not on mute. That was inappropriate. 2 house lots, sprinkler system, the residential homes with sprinkler systems. And that's for safety issues, makes sense. Okay, any other questions from the board? Deputy Williams, what about the fire hydrants? Are they a good distance considering the length of the road? And
Yeah, so it looks like they're adding one more hydrant up at the end of the street, right at the crest of the circle, and that'll be sufficient. It'd be nice if we could loop the water system in to give it more pressure, but
I have that noted, water line to increase the pressure, correct?
yeah, but I'm not sure they're gonna be able to do it if they can't cross the conservation area. I'm not sure how they would get out to Merden Street to do it, so I'd have to give that some more consideration.
Is there any way to get to Bloom? Or Blossom, excuse me. Is there any water in the Blossom?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, my guess is if it is there, it would be very small anyways. But I'd have to check with the DPW in the morning.
Deputy, first, I'm sorry about that outburst from somebody participating. I understand your concern about a sprinkler system. However, none of the homes on Arthur have a sprinkler system. We're also adding a hydrant directly next to where homes are going to be placed. It just seems like, you know, we're improving the fire truck access as it is. For a fire truck to come up here, I literally don't know how you would turn around besides backing out. So by being able to improve this cul-de-sac, I feel like we are helping the town out quite a bit. And to what Ed Jacobs said earlier about trash removal and delivery trucks, also the crews that snowplow ask the owner to leave the gate unlocked, which helps them obviously store snow for one, and then be able to turn around without having to in a safe way. So I feel like we are helping the town by improving this to a cul-de-sac versus a dead end with a metal gate.
I agree that cul-de-sac's a nice feature, but the cul-de-sac allows you to get your 2 lots, so you're getting benefit out of it also. If you didn't put the cul-de-sac in, you wouldn't get your 2 lots. So I personally can tell you, I've done about a 14-point turn and turned a fire truck around at the top, and then I've also backed a fire truck down that street in my younger years. So it can be done. But I definitely would stand fast on the 2 residential sprinkler systems. It's a standard we put into place after a couple of subdivisions on the west side, and I think we have to remain standard as we go along in the future from this.
Okay.
All right, other questions from the board? If not, we'll open it to public.
So anyone from the public who has questions or would like to make comment, please use the raise your hand icon. I see Counselor Lally, and I'm going to unlock him first and ask him if he would like to speak now or bat cleanup. You've got 3 or 4 other people who would like to ask questions.
Oh, if it's all right with you, I'll just go while you have me.
Sure, let's go.
Scholar and a gentleman, Mr. Director. I appreciate it. I wanted to voice some of the concerns that not only I have with the project, but also, you know, neighbors of the project, constituents of mine have had. They've reached out to me about. They are concerned about the water. You know, they have, you know, water in their basements already, and they've noticed water increasing in their basements. This is something that's, you know, a hindrance to them that, you know, is you know, no fault of their own. This is increased since they've, you know, came to the neighborhood. One thing that I caught in the presentation was that the capping of the spring will take place or would take place after the project is permitted, but the water is non-potable. If the water is non-potable, I don't know why, the process to cap it wouldn't happen already. We're hearing that the, capping of the well will not affect the water for the residents nearby, and that it can be done by the property owner, the developer, but that they also aren't going to do that until they have another alternative for the property, which I think is something that I just, it would seem like, the thing to do would be, if it is non-potable, to cap it either way, unless there's something else to it, which is what I would like to express a concern about. Several residents have reached out to me. They're looking for, if this project does go forward, they're looking for a stipulation, with the, consent or willingness from the developer, hopefully, that there be some kind of buffer, a tree buffer for the neighbors who are already living there. They have backed up to, what they would, feel is the woods for a while, and they don't want to have to lose that if they can help it. The project, I just have, concerns about, and I'm sure you'll hear some of the other concerns from the abutters who live right on Ridge, Arthur, Bellevue, and Merton, who I'm sure are the people lined up to talk after me. And I'll leave some of it for them, but there is a lot of concern and disruption. And I would like to, take a brief moment to rest on the fact, as far as the planning board is concerned, the board's looking at how to improve Brockton, how to attract people to Brockton, and how to grow the city. And we're looking at one of the oldest and most, I think, not relatable, but I'm missing the right word for it, but historical sites in the Lithuanian Village. A lot of folks who lived and grew up in the neighborhood and around the area can fondly recall parents and grandparents taking them up to get water, the way things used to be, and how they'd walk around. I think that there is a historical and sort of local cultural significance to the property that I would be hesitant to lose as we, continue to, grow the city. We want to keep the village's culture. We want to keep the village. I would also just sort of express a little concern over the, derision with which the deputy chief was met for his concern. The reason that a lot of the other properties on Arthur do not have residential sprinkler systems is because these residences were built before a sprinkler system was required. This kind of standard is present because there, it's a public safety issue. It's a public safety concern. Houses and what they're built with nowadays can go up quite a lot quicker than they used to. And we have a fire department that is top notch, that can get, anywhere into this city as quick as they possibly can. But still, if we can provide the precaution, if we can take the precaution, if we can, do everything we need to make sure that the property and people within these houses are protected, I think that would be a prudent move. So I would, obviously trust the judgment of the members of the board, and I appreciate their time, but I would ask that they pay attention to the concerns of the constituents and the residents nearby as they come up, and that they, please keep all of our comments in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowley. I'm sorry, I'm trying to balance something right now. I do want to, we have a couple other questions. I'll get to them in just a second. We had one typed in It said, if a fire truck can turn around, then why do we need a cul-de-sac? And it's like, my answer that I typed in was that while a fire truck can turn around, if you heard from Deputy Chief Williams, it's a multi-point turn to get it to do that. And it's not an optimal situation. Sometimes, emergency vehicles need to leave sites quickly to get to other sites. And it is a city requirement that we have a cul-de-sac so that vehicles can turn around. It's just an overall improvement for public safety. I do want to point out that at one time, Arthur and Bellevue and Banks and Albert and Lewis, they were all part of another subdivision. You can see these roads are all parallel with each other. And Ridge was intended to connect them all. And Ridge never got built. And so if Ridge had been built, there would be no reason to create a cul-de-sac. You can see Ridge goes up through there, and then you have another street north of that that connects all those. So they're not all dead ends. Unfortunately, at Arthur, the street never got built out. And having a cul-de-sac would improve that area without opening it up to cross traffic or cut through traffic by continuing Ridge down to Merton, which nobody really wants to see. So that was the shorthand answer for that. David Doyle.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you are. I can hear you now.
Yeah, my name's David Doyle. I live at 56 Ridge Street, which also abuts that property where Merton Street is. They keep on saying they don't want to touch that end of Ridge Street along with Merton, but there's no conditions about that in any writing, along with tree removal that lines those two streets. My other concerns is water in the basements. We all get water in the basements up on that end of Ridge Street. At one time, there was an old geological map of the city of Brockton. The house across the street on either side showed underground springs. When it rained really hard, water would come into our basements, anything usually over 3 inches. And if you guys remember when we had a storm probably about 10 years ago, where it was like several inches of rain in a couple of days, the city flooded out. My sub pumps couldn't even come close keeping up with that water. And it was all clean water from underground springs. The other concerns that I have is green space. We're losing green space in the city. That green space up there also provides shelter for animals. We see deer, we see turkey, an occasional coyote, and whatever else that lives in there. We've tried to stop this before, probably about 8-10 years ago when Gallagher was on the commission. He was totally against it. And also, back in July, you guys voted this down for this. This is ridiculous what the people of Ridge, Merton, and Arthur Street have to go through every 3 or 4 years because the developer wants to go in there. It keeps on getting voted down. I hope you guys vote this down for the reasons that I stated. And one other quick note is that is all ledge in there. The house that was put in probably about a dozen years ago on 90 Merton Street, they had to blast the roadway to get the utilities in. And the guy across the street, which was on the corner of Merton, Edgar, he never got water in his basement before until they blasted that. And also the pool next door to me at 60 Ridge Street, when I moved back in there in 85, they had a blast for that pool. We're just kind of fed up with this whole thing. People move into that street, families, because it is a quiet, dead-end street. I just don't want to see any chance of Ridge or Merton open along with the tree removals of that street. Thank you for your time. Thank you, sir.
Would one of the applicant's representatives, is Ridge a public or private way? Do we know?
Plan?
It's public.
I believe it's public. Unconstructed private, is that correct, Ed?
That is
Mr.
correct. That is correct. Private.
Through the chair, the paved parts of the street are public. The paper street, all paper streets are private
Right.
until they would be paved and taken by the city.
That's correct. And that portion of Ridge Street that's north of the wetlands going to Bellevue, that's not even wide enough to put a public street in there. It's 20 feet wide.
How do we go about getting a private street vacated? Do the property owners have to do that? The adjacent property owners?
That is correct.
Of which you may be one.
Right. We're on the east side. Yeah. Technically, the current owner owns to the center line of Ridge Street.
Correct.
So we'd have to get together with these abutters to do an abandonment.
Mhm.
Phil, you're muted. I don't know if you're trying to.
No, I'm thinking out loud. Maybe it is part of our discussions as to getting that section of Ridge Street abandoned by the owners so that we don't have any future thought of construction. And that might help alleviate Mr. Doyle's, some of Mr. Doyle's concerns.
Mhm.
Mr. Douglas Wedge, I am unlocking you.
Am I unlocked?
You are unlocked.
That's good. I need to be locked up. Anyway, couple statements were covered by one of my neighbors, also the city councilor and state rep. So I'll continue on some of the other points. Number one, your previous presenters on other projects had meetings with the residents. We've had nothing, no input, no asking our opinion, no telling us what's going on with the proposed builders. We would think that would be nice if they had taken some of our concerns in before we've come to this. There were 35 members of our neighborhood that were at the ZBA, and they voted it down. They voted down the two unconforming or non-conforming lots. And there's no doubt in my mind is once we open the key to the door, that they will be back in front of zoning and saying, now we have a cul-de-sac there, grant us the right to build on these unconforming lots. My big concern, I am a direct abutter to the woods. Since this cistern, well, spring, it's been referred by many of these things, has been talked about, that they have not taken water out of it. I get water in my garage now with just a minimal rain. When we had that 100-year rain, I had water coming up through my French drain I never had in my entire life. I am a lifelong resident of Brockton. And you can listen back to previous meeting at the Conservation Commission when the owner of the well got pushback on building. He said, okay, fine, I'll build a preschool there. So they have no respect for the residents, as you heard the statement that somebody said about the sprinkler. These people have no respect. The proposed builder keeps calling it a town. It's a city. They don't know because they don't live here. They don't care because they're going to build and they're going to move on. We do not need another project. If you go up Carey Hill, you can see all those houses where all the woods were taken down and the animals are now in the woods next to us. And I'm glad they're there. When they built the school on North Quincy Street, all those animals came over to our woods and they live there. And we're fine with that. Little bunny rabbits, all kinds of deer that eat my bushes, and they're welcome to them. But the other concern is if I'm getting water now with them not using the water, What's to say when they start blasting, because we all know it's ledge up there, that it doesn't change the water table? And with climate change, and you can debate how climate change is happening, but it is definitely happening. We're going to have more water events and rain events and snow events and severe weather events that are going to affect my property, my neighbors' properties. This is a bad idea, a bad fit for Brockton. We used to be known as the Tree City. We're no longer known as that because of all the buildings that they allow stuffing them in between houses. It amazes me how many houses are stuffed in between other houses. This is a project, when the man bought the property, he knew he was buying a well. He wasn't buying a place to build houses. So he got his money and his tax breaks for having a well up there, or a spring. And now, for whatever his reason is, he says it's not drinkable water. I'd like an independent test to see if the water is potable. I don't think it's a good idea. It's definitely not a right fit, and it will guarantee it will change the water table. And they've not spoken to the residents, not taken our concerns in. Only in these meetings have you heard our concerns, and they've offered no mitigation fund if they were allowed to build this, that if we got water and flooding, they are lessening the value of the properties around here if this project goes forward. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you working on these boards. I know how difficult they can be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Hang on just a second. And Sean Lusk, I'm going to open your microphone. Sean, you should be able to speak now.
Hi, this is actually Alexandra Strangis. I have Sean with me. We're at 57 Ridge Street. We received a letter to attend as we're within 300 feet of the proposed estates. We also have concerns regarding how the buildings would impact our existing home. To reiterate, we are getting increased water in our basement during heavy rain, and destroying this green space may further disrupt the water table. We are also concerned about excavation that could directly impact our home as well. Everything else has already been said, so I apologize for reiterating, but thank you so much. We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much. And is there anyone else who would like to speak on this topic? I have Ms. Lasso. Hang on just a second. Liz, you're should be unlocked. Liz Lasso? Did it work this time?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. Hi, Rob. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's well. I am a resident on 99 Armiston Street, which is directly behind the Parkview and the Heritage Court development that was mentioned earlier during another one of the hearings from our rep, Michelle Dubois. And I have been living a really living hell over in my part of this neighborhood in the city, because there has been absolutely no jurisdiction or help with the developers, I will say, because we've had 3 of them now dealing with the city. We also had wetlands over here. We have problems with them not adhering to the zoning rules. We have problems with them not adhering to the build site conditions, because there's just not enough power in your office, Mr. May, in the city, to actually hold the developers accountable to what they're doing. And that is not your fault, Rob. You do an awesome job, and so doesn't your team. There's just not enough of you to enforce the things that are supposed to happen and go on in the city. So that's one of my major concerns. I don't want to put other Brockton citizens through this same kind of like hell that I've been living through. And you know what? I just have to say this. It would have been nice if Jack Lally would have attended one of our meetings over the years to get things done right over at the Heritage Court and over at the Parkview Lane in that development. But we've never had any help from him whatsoever. So him attending this meeting tonight, I wonder what his ulterior motive is for attending this meeting, because if he's really interested in helping the citizens. he
That's
would
enough.
help the citizens.
I don't want you disrespecting,
I'm not disrespecting, I'm just stating the facts, okay?
Okay.
So my
Thank
biggest
you.
concern is,
Thank you.
my biggest concern is that another development is gonna be allowed to be developed in the city, and that it's just gonna run amok and run awry. And instead of looking out for the citizens who are already living here and already paying taxes and who already are going through serious like water issues. I'm going through water issues. My basement has been flooded 3 times since this has all gone down in my neighborhood, and no one's done a thing about it. So that's my major concern. I'm here to speak on behalf of the other people to prevent them from going through the same thing that I've had to go through over the years.
Thank you. We heard your concerns and your frustration, and we appreciate your time tonight. We did hear you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there anybody else who would like to speak on this issue? Counselor Lally, you have your hand up. Let me see if there's anybody else that wants to speak first. And please go ahead and unmute yourself. You should be able to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Director. I wanted to offer a point of clarification. All planning, zoning, and other meetings, not all, but all the, the ones that happened where, policy was made, decisions were made, and the project to deal with Woodland Park were initiated, happened prior to my time on the council. And as for the ones that happened afterward, which were mostly clarifications and updates from the developers, I have been at those meetings. I've also attended the HOA meetings that the Woodland Park development has held. I know that you can't please everybody. Some folks are always going to be frustrated, but I would like to use this time to clarify between facts and ravings, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. I do have, and I see Ms. Lasso wants to speak again, but I'm hoping that we can avoid a point counterpoint, and I'll leave that up to the chair. One, we have a couple of Q&A questions, and someone wants to know about, will there be any blasting, or do you anticipate any blasting? And I'm hoping that somebody from the applicant's team can address that.
Rob, I could address that. We are not anticipating blasting. It's definitely possible, and I've heard all the residents' concerns, which throughout this process, especially with conservation, we've tried to address different drainage things, specific items, and we've talked about the well, and we worked very closely with conservation to try and appease some of these concerns. We're adding 2 lots on 2 oversized lots with excess frontage, excess area. I know Brockton is short on housing. It's going to help that. I don't see how this is a detriment to the neighborhood. There is no way that it will not increase the value of the neighborhood by just adding the cul-de-sac plus the 2 lots. So I just felt like I wanted to say that as well. I know that other projects have been proposed, but we're just focused on trying to improve this area, and we're not putting a daycare, as someone had mentioned. We're proposing to extend a cul-de-sac and add 2 single-family homes that, like I said, would improve this area.
Thank you. Rob, is Megan still on, or did she sign off?
No, she has signed off.
Okay, because I see that conservation addressed the water issues or the wetland and the well. And didn't find there'd be any additional water issues.
Let me jump in a little bit on that. What they did was, and I want to be sure that I'm not saying this incorrectly, but that there will be no negative impact on the wetlands. I don't know if they dealt with
The houses and the basements.
correct.
Okay. So I just think that
That's
doesn't.
not their purview.
That, okay. But what about the wildlife?
Can I address that as well?
I just want to hit, can Rob just first answer? Shouldn't they be involved with the conservation as far as the wildlife in this area?
If it was a conservation land, city-owned conservation land, there'd be much more involvement right now, unless there are some endangered species. There's not a whole heck of a lot we can do from the city's perspective on wildlife.
Okay, so there was no water study done as far as the tables. And I understand
Right.
point on conservation. This isn't endangered species, but I still feel like there's still more work to be done.
Attorney Nasrallah has, who is part of the presentation team, would like to say something.
You're on mute.
Fine.
You have to unmute yourself, Attorney Nazarella.
Phil, you need to unmute.
Okay, usually they like lawyers muted, but I appreciate it being unmuted. Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, Mr. May, I've been listening to all of the comments with great sensitivity to the neighbors, with great apathy and feeling for, obviously, my client, the developer, who is a very reputable developer. And I've found in my experiences, sometimes unfounded speculations and concerns leads to a hysteria that is somewhat unfair. Now, the initial, and I'm going to recap real quickly so I don't, belabor anything. There was concern, about the capping of the well. Clearly, a developer cannot cap anything or do anything till he makes the final purchase of the property, which would be naturally after there have been, the permits have been granted to him. There were concerns about tree buffers, which I have not seen in any other development project I've been involved in, that you were required to keep trees up. The individual or entity that owns this property has a right under the law to cut down every tree if he wanted to. That's not what this individual wants to do. He wants to make a very aesthetic, pleasingly properties, which he has by right to put there, 2 properties. So how he constructs the trees or doesn't construct it, leaves the trees, is up to him, but he's going to do it in a manner as aesthetically pleasing as he can, because obviously he wants to sell those to the right people. And when you're talking about lots that are well oversized, that is part of what aesthetics means. And the division of derision caused is an outpour of some frustration by one of the listeners. While inappropriate, it should not have a place in these proceedings, no more than should political or popularity issues. We are here to abide by the law. And when I hear some of the residents, they weren't approached. There were 35 members at the zoning board from the neighborhood that heard what was going on. They heard from the Conservation Commission, and they are hearing from the planning board. There are no surprises here. No one's trying to blindfold what the processes we're going through. The extension of the road is for the benefit of that whole area in the turnaround. And probably all of us in our younger days could back up a truck, but we don't know what delivery trucks, what commercial trucks are going down the street. I don't think that's even an issue anymore. The fact that we are closing a well, there is no evidence, scientific evidence, that any of the water problems that these neighbors may face or have incurred has any relationship to do with that particular well that's being capped off. And that well could be capped off with or without a development. So all I request of the board is to confine the issues within the purview of the planning board rules and regulations, which we try to do. And yes, I'm a great lover of animals, had a German Shepherd for 13 years, but quite frankly, the lifestyle and habitat of the animals is not to be within the purview of this board or any other board within the city. Those are all nice things to talk about, that this is a project where the developer has put down a lot of money, time and expense, dealing with rising interest rates, purchase and sale agreements, a lot of things in the balance. And for us to bring in things which are far and apart from within the purview of the law is unfair. And I think if we abide by what the rules and regulations are, these developers will create the property the neighbors will be happy with, will not incur any problems, and certainly not caused by these individuals here. And I think we have met all of the conditions, both engineering-wise, aesthetic-wise, and building-wise, that the city and its boards would like to see from us. And I would like to move forward beyond that and put aside politics and popularity. Zoning and planning is not a matter of popularity. It's a matter of abiding by the rules and regulations of the law. My only final statement is, and with great respect to my friend, Deputy Chief Williams, I am unsure myself. So as to whether or not it's a regulation of imposing a sprinkler system in a single-family residential home, because it's of a large expense. And I really think we have to weigh whether or not it's something that should be required if it's not regulated under a local ordinance imposed by law to do that. Other than that, I would ask the board to look at this favorably and allow us to move forward. Thank you.
Mr. May, and I agree with a lot of what you said, Attorney Nazarella, and if your developer really wants to keep these houses aesthetically pleasing to sell, I think that he could take into consideration the tree buffers that the neighbors are asking. Why not? Let's keep it a friendly neighborhood.
I believe he will, because we want to be good neighbors, and I believe he will. I was just making a point. We're being asked a lot of things that don't exist within the law, but we will do that.
So also, just maybe lose my train of thought. I was going to ask, could a condition or something be written into the deed that there was a concern from one of the neighbors that, okay, if these 3 houses are built, that they will
Two
then
houses.
build 2, okay, they will build extra ones because it's now a cul-de-sac. Can something be written into the deed or condition so to prevent that? Is that something allowable? I guess is my question.
It actually wouldn't be possible based on the
Greg?
layout of the land. There's no other land available to create more lots. This lot right here goes right up to Ridge Street right here. It has frontage all the way around to here. And this
Do you
lot
have
has
a-
frontage all the way over here to Ridge Street.
Greg,
So-
do you have a drawing that doesn't have those lines on it, that just has the property lines?
Yeah, Greg, the existing condition should have it, right? There you
no,
go.
it's not it's the
I was just looking for the lot lines of the subdivision.
Oh, yeah, the lot
without
layout
the-
sheet.
without the conservation colors on it.
Correct. It'd be easier to read. But lots 1 and 2 completely encompass the cul-de-sac.
Proposed cul-de-sac frontage is correct.
And there is no other frontage for somebody to build off of that cul-de-sac.
That is correct.
Okay, well, so the concerns that I'm hearing from the neighbors, which I feel for them, I mean, I lived on a road on the other side of the city and got tons of water in my basement. So that's the only concern that hasn't really been addressed, and we should all be concerned with this. The water tables. How are these additional houses going to affect the neighbors and their basements and their flooding? We don't have any study or information on that, do we, Rob?
I do not have any of that, any information to that effect.
I do think that that is something needed.
Greg, you can speak to that.
Yeah, Greg, you might want to help us out. There's no way to foresee changing the water table. You have the intermittent stream where the water naturally flows. That's where the water is going to continue to flow when we do these homes. If we wanted to on lot one, we could consider doing a raised ranch home that has less impact on digging the ground. And to what you had mentioned about the trees, I assume that the residents went to the town hall and looked at these plans, which is why we have to submit them so far in advance. We can't take any trees down within the 25-foot buffer. We can't take any trees down on Ridge Street. And in the conservation meetings on lot 2, it showed our limit of work on the back of the house as well. So I agree. Yeah, we will not be taking, we will be leaving a buffer, but those items have been addressed in conservation. We were at 2 meetings to go over these items. So I feel like that's.
And in general, the way the water flows into the road and gets all picked up within the road and directed to these catch basins in here will take water surface flow away from these areas.
Yeah, and there's already asphalt in that cul-de-sac area that the water is going not where it would be intended to. At least we would be controlling it. Sorry, I'm pointing at my screen. That would we are really improving and controlling the water more than it is now.
Right, and we are proposing infiltration systems for the roofs. So the driveways will flow into the road is going to take it to the catch basins, and the roof drains are going to take it into the infiltration systems.
I can show one of the plans from conservation, even though this is not for this board, but this is what was before conservation.
The regards
to lot 2.
Right, the water table is in regards to the planning board. Is this in the planning board purview? I don't understand. Like, we went through this with conservation, and I thought that was addressed.
But we do have to take into consideration that of the current water issues, and I don't see enough evidence that we're not going to add to the existing issue. Someone did bring up a good point. When you start blasting in this area, what is going to happen to the water in that well?
That's if we blast. We don't know that that's what is going to be required in this particular area. That's an assumption. And I can't not speculate on something that we don't know. And I don't think
That's just it. The unknown is what's scaring the neighbors, and I feel for them, and I feel for the developer. I understand, it's his property, he wants to build, but he also we all need to take into consideration the fears of the neighbors, their concerns living there.
Okay.
So I think that we should maybe consider continuing this with some.
Madam
additional
Chair?
plans. Yes, Rob?
Representative Dubois would like to add some more.
All right, let me finish and then she can speak.
Okay.
I'm feeling strongly like this needs to be continued, do a little more studying on this, confirm whether you're going to be blasting or not. You talked about raised ranches, if that will help, or as part of a study, validate or verify that there won't be additional water damage to the neighbors. If you come back with a stronger plan to make not only the neighbors, but me more comfortable with this, because I am a resident in Brockton, and I would not want to deal with this either.
What type of study would that be?
Well, we've had.
I'm not aware of any water table study or a ledge study or something of that nature. I'm really thrown off. I feel like we've presented something that is going to improve this neighborhood. I know Ms. Dubois is going to come on and use this as a political forum, but if look, the proposal that you guys just approved, the preliminary, had so many more lots in such a small area, and those lots aren't even conforming. We have oversized lots, and we're improving a dead end that has a gate on it. How can this not be a benefit to the town? I've never been to an approval process where the fire chief wants to back up to a 13-point turn for a fire truck. We're making it so they can turn around. I feel like I'm not sure what additional study you would I don't even know what legal study that there would be for something like that. Ed, Greg, Phil, I mean, I've never heard of that.
Well, you added your input or offering maybe raised ranches in you being the expert, saying that that would prevent the water tables from going up. So I feel like you know what to do to improve this plan to help the neighbors feel better and maybe improve the drainage.
If
and
I can
also-
just, if I can just interject, the water table isn't going to come up. I don't know, like, where you're getting that.
It's the top of the hill.
If you think about what we're doing, right? We're adding a cul-de-sac. The waters are contained inside of that pavement, inside of that sidewalk, the curbing. That is all going down into the catch basins. The catch basins are going to grab that water, bring it all the way down into Intervale Street and out into the trout stream. None of that is ever going to see, none of the neighbors are ever going to see that. The houses are going to be built. They're going to have infiltration systems, which Greg was just about to show you before we get off on this tangent, but the water is going to be contained, and there'll be what we call net zero increase. It is up to us to prove that there'll be no more water going off the site than there is now. That's what our job is. And that's what will
Good,
happen.
Good, and we're making progress, gentlemen. We're making progress. We got the trees, the buffers addressed. We have the issue of no additional homes on that cul-de-sac since it's being developed.
And no additional water. That's what I'm trying to get at. There's not going to be any additional water. But you seem to be glossing over that. Greg, bring up the conservation plan, please.
Maybe it's because I lived through it, so I understand, you know.
Well, everybody's lived through development, right? I mean, what you're doing is you're trying to stop this development, and I
I'm
don't.
not trying to stop. I'm trying to make it work for
Well, we
you,
are trying
the
to make it work.
developer, and
If
the community and the city of Brockton. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not
Okay.
taking sides here. I'm trying to make it work.
I
for
know,
everyone.
but I'm explaining to you that there will be no water coming onto the property that isn't there already now. Behind this house that Greg is showing, there's an infiltration system. Okay, that is going to handle all the roof runoff. The driveway is pitched to go into the road, and as I said before, the road will be channeled into the catch basins and all the way down Intervale Street down Arthur Street into Intervale Street. There's swales behind the house because it's higher in the back where we mentioned where Macy had built those houses. Those swales are going to take the water on either side of the house. On the left side of the house, it's going to go out into the street. On the right side of the house, it's going to go into the wetlands where it's always gone. That is what we're doing, is that's how we're taking care of the water issue. There's not going to be any rise in the water table from building one house.
And if the board requires conservation required this roof drain system for this house right here because it's within the buffer. If the board wants to condition a roof drain system, which we're kind of expecting anyways for this house, we can do that as well. Grade the driveway and everything to go
Now
into
we're
the
talking.
cul-de-sac.
And I believe there's like a broken city drainage pipe or something that needs to be addressed. That would be helpful if it was fixed. A storm drain that's broken.
That's down on Merton Street.
I'm not aware of that.
I thought there was a drain at Ridge. That's a city issue that the city should probably address.
City's got to take care of that.
Down here?
No, I think it's.
Or
It's
I think
in
it's
the
in the
wetland.
wetland itself.
Okay, yeah, there is a pipe there. I see it.
Oh, through here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we do consider this and improve draining system as a condition,
Mhm.
this broken storm drain be fixed.
We can't agree to do that. That's a town item, and that would require conservation approval. That's not within.
Yeah, it's within Bridge Street right here.
So
This,
Right.
Conservation
Right.
approval first for to repair the broken storm drain
Hang on just a
Just to
second,
help.
Tony.
with the concerns of the water tables.
Just quick question for the engineering team. We know that, and you have marked a drain, and it's a little teeny tiny drain. Where does it go, and where does it start? In the Ridge right away? Do you know?
No.
This
All we
pipe right
found, Rob, was an exposed pipe. that it looked like it, it just went away over the top. So the top of the pipe is exposed.
So it's not broken or blocked or anything that you know of.
Not that I know of. We couldn't get access inside it. We don't know where it's coming from and we don't know where it's going.
Oh, I had heard from the conservation agent that it was broken.
It may be, not, but I'm not aware of it.
We were never informed of that in the multiple meetings we went through with conservation. But to Madam
Oh,
Chair,
hold on a second. Greg, go to the right of the head wall.
Up here?
Yeah, zoom in where it said, no, go to the left, right between the well house and the head wall, please. Yeah, now zoom, go to the left. Okay, this is what Megan's talking about, Rob. See the 12-inch CMP ends? And then the 8-inch ADS starts and goes to the head wall?
Oh, this?
There is a break right there. I found it in the field. There was a boot that was a transition piece that went from the 12-inch RCP to the 8-inch ADS, and that boot, I don't know what happened. Maybe a tree fell on it, or maybe just expansion, contraction from summer to winter, it popped off. So that would have to be replaced at some point.
Okay.
I'm sure now that that's what Megan is talking about. Yeah.
So that then goes to the head wall
Yes.
and looks like it terminates. It doesn't go anywhere after that?
No, if you look at that picture of the head, well, let me back up, Greg. Yeah, zoom out. So
Or
go
is
to the
that where
right.
it?
Yeah, go to the right. You see where it says 12-inch CMP?
Yeah.
There's another head wall. So
Yeah.
the water was coming down that way. And we've already mentioned that the well house, that square building.
Right.
So the current owner was getting water coming towards the well house, and he was afraid of contamination on the well. So he put that head wall in, and he put that drainage pipe to bypass the well building. And he had it come out into that head wall down there
Oh.
to take care of the surface water running. So there was, the development up towards the north and the east. He was just concerned that, the water would
Okay.
get into the cistern. So he put that in himself.
So it's not the water or the drain in Ridge.
No,
It's
no,
it's this other one.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
thank you.
It's separated by a foot. That'll be, something that we should fix, yes.
Ed, is that something that you need a machine to repair, or is it?
No.
Okay.
Jason, it would be very simple.
Just the guy with a shovel and some.
Yeah, a piece of ADS.
With the approval of Megan, the conservation agent, I would agree to repair that. In addition, like you were saying before, Greg, for lot 2, I would also agree to do some roof infiltration drains as well.
But lot 1.
Lot 1, I'm sorry. We already agreed to do on lot 2.
And we can grade the site, same as the other one was shown to direct water. Right now water flows this way right across the land, and we can grade it kind of like this to have swales coming along the side of the house on each side to direct it into the cul-de-sac. Along the, go along the gutters and into the drains and out, bypass, create kind of a dike, a dam to block water coming across this way.
What condition is the curb line and gutter on Arthur Street up to those catch basins?
We have a granite curb on the south side. And we have edge of pavement on the north side. With a raised,
it's kind of a berm along here.
Yeah, there's kind of a berm along that edge. Keeps the water on the street.
And so this new.
Okay, because the
cul-de-sac
contours
will-
don't really show that.
Yeah, this
The existing contours kind of just.
yeah, and we're gonna extend the curb all the way up to like this point right here for the new road. So from this property line out is like the new
Right.
cul-de-sac. That's, and then from here, this edge of pavement to here is what has to be constructed as well. So we're gonna extend that vertical granite curb to
Oh,
about.
Can we all agree that there's more work to be done to this plan and we should continue it? Because so
I
far
think we
we're
show
hearing
what we,
We're hearing improve the drainage, go to conservation first to fix the broken drain.
Madam Chair,
infiltration drains to, what is it, the first?
I think these could all be conditions of approval and, you know, for approval of a definitive subdivision, we don't need to show full build out and what we're gonna put on each one of these lots, but you can condition it. So when we do design these lots and these houses that we'll put in the approved infiltration systems, we'll put in the swales, we'll direct everything into the road. But as far as more work to be done, I don't know what else more I would show on the plan currently. In terms of is that,
And we had the sprinklers to the two.
And Madam Chair,
Mhm.
I know we've spent a lot of time talking about both stormwater and sheet flow and groundwater. And obviously those are two different systems, but they are interacted with each other at some point, and I don't know how to address that.
Okay, who does?
Obviously, Chike is going to want to, is required to issue a stormwater permit for these properties. Any site that there's going to be excavation on requires a stormwater permit, but we don't have anything related to groundwater that I am aware of as a municipality. Now, we're not adding, this project doesn't add to the groundwater because it's directing the flow to existing catch basins. There may be a question of whether, because they're not pulling water out of the ground now for drinking water, that is causing the water table to rise. But what you have right now is that when the cistern fills, and that's an action of the groundwater, ground table filling it in, there is an overflow pipe that removes that water. So it's, I don't want to say it's a closed system, but when the cistern fills, it fills to its natural level of the rest of the water table. It doesn't go higher than the water table, which is why there's an overflow pipe on it. So it would probably come up a little bit higher than that, but I don't know what that ground level is. It's probably just right underneath the surface.
Eddie, I think this is your area
Mhm.
to address Rob's question. It's a good one. When the stormwater and groundwater interact, what do you normally do in a situation like that? What's the plan, I guess, for lack of better?
Well, I think what we've shown is how we're gonna handle the water. The only additional impervious area that we're adding is, that's not going to be taken away down Arthur Street, is the roof, right? And the only thing we can do with the roof is to put in an infiltration system, which we're doing. So, I mean, I don't know how else to answer that unless we run roof drains out into the street, you know, and then it would really take everything away. If you want to put a French drain around the building and run it out into the street.
and we're gonna have to tie that into the drains or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be an issue.
Yeah,
That might be a solution.
Well, that would be a violation of the stormwater
Yeah,
ordinance.
so,
You have to retain that water on site.
and which, then that's
Um,
what we're doing, and that's what the infiltration systems are for. So there's no, you know, when it rains, the water comes down onto that site and it gradually makes its way. If you look at the contours, it makes its way from the northeast to the, you know, towards the southwest. Southeast towards the northwest, I'm sorry. So we're putting in the cul-de-sac. We've talked about how that's going to take care of it. Now we're putting the house there, right? So all the water's going to, in a rainstorm now, is going to come rushing off the roof. And what do we do to keep that on the site? They don't want that to go off the site because it's groundwater and it has to They
want to recharge groundwater.
Recharge it. So we
That's-
put it in the infiltration system to slow it down. And then it permeates into the ground slowly from the, it's like a recharge area. So that's how that's how you handle the groundwater. That's basically all we can do.
Actually, it ameliorates the situation, makes it better by the development. And what happens with that, as Rob said, when the cistern rises and gets filled with, that all happens independent of whether there's a development or not a development.
Yeah.
The erection of the houses, construction of the houses has got nothing to do with the flow of the ground, the water situation that people are concerned about. But the development with infiltration system is going to modify and decrease the water running off those particular lots.
Correct.
And then I just lost track that after this, it has to go before the board for the
Stormwater.
Water Authority.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like I've stolen the show. Other board members, any other questions?
I don't have any other questions at this point, just that there's been a lot of discussion on this tonight, a lot of work by all parties, including the councils and the attorneys and the engineers, and obviously the neighbors on this one here. So I just feel like I'm not comfortable with approving this right now, but I think continuing it to get a little bit more clarification on what's going on. And I think what we did tonight, and I hope that the abutters and the neighbors that were in on this got a little bit more clarification on it. But I just think we need to kind of get a little bit more clarification on this one before we move forward on it. That's my opinion.
Would the board be able to enumerate what the clarification is that is needed or requested, so we're clear on what you're looking for?
I think the neighbors have discussed an increase in basement flooding since I'm assuming it's since the well stopped being drained, but I don't know what the correlation between those are. Because it's I mean, just from high school physics, the water seeks its own level and is spilling out into the emergency overflow, which then eventually works its way into the street anyway.
And it goes through the wetland. I can't imagine enough.
It goes to the wetland, and the wetland comes to the street because it doesn't just end right there where your green lines are.
Yeah. I can't imagine that they're taking enough water out of there from that well to affect the groundwater situation in that area.
Yeah.
It's not a stream of trucks every day, all day being filled up in the past, from what I understand.
Well,
all the residents stated that they've got water since the day that they moved in, not since the well's been closed.
Right, so
And
I'm
we're
a little
controlling more water
confused as to what we're looking to further lay out in front of the board.
Yeah,
The purpose of
stormwater
the
we
planning board.
discussed. Stormwater we discussed further with the stormwater committee. Any other, we discussed conditions of approval for drainage systems for lot 1.
And I think some movement towards the abandonment of ridge, which would then create a permanent tree line.
We agreed to that.
And board, this is
Yeah,
why you get the
so
big, this is why you get the big money.
Yeah, right. So I feel like we've addressed a lot of their concerns, including the drain water, since they're going to improve the drainage. They're going to get approval from Megan for the broken drain system. Is that correct? Mhm.
That could be a condition. Yep.
Mhm. Infiltration systems. Sprinkler 2 of the houses for safety. Stormwater, groundwater, we didn't really. I don't think we really got a condition for that, did we? For the interaction of the stormwater and the groundwater?
Well,
Yeah.
we were asking that the lot one show, or that a lot one is conditioned to require roof runoff recharge.
Rob, that'll come up in stormwater anyways. I don't mind
Yes, it will.
just asking more or less.
Yeah, it will. It will.
Okay, so that's, and then the abandonment of ridge for the trees, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions, comments?
I think a lot of the conditions you just outlined would benefit the proposal that we have. And I'd like to move forward with the plans that we have, knowing that we have to go to stormwater as well.
Madam Chair, have you closed the public comment period?
No, not yet.
Okay, I've Douglas Wedge, excuse me, would like to readdress, and I'm gonna unlock his microphone. And we're hoping not to get to a point tit for tat and
No, real
point
quick,
counterpoint.
real
Thank you,
quick.
Doug.
Just real quick, the attorney's timeline on the hearing all this information was incorrect. We went to zoning, then we went to the conservation, now we're with you. He said we had all this information prior to meeting with you. And all the residents that were at zoning board had this information. That's not true. And secondly, nobody's addressed, just tangentially, they've addressed the fact that when they dynamite, which they're going to have to, we've already told you what's up here, what it's going to do to the groundwater, adding on top of water, they're no longer drawing out of that spring. So you're not drawing out water from the spring. It sits there. Now you add these 100-year events that are happening every 5 and 10 years. The water issue will change. Somehow, some agency, some engineering firm, someone has to be out there that can say that this is not going to be an issue. And if it is an issue, there needs to be a mitigation fund. Thank you for your
Oh.
time.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you for reminding me on the mitigation fund. But also one of the conditions, Mr. Rockwood, I see your name, I don't.
Jason.
Jason Kennedy.
You said you might not be blasting if you do raised ranches, so do you be comfortable with that being one of the conditions? No blasting, the houses would be raised ranches?
No, I'm not comfortable
No,
saying,
I think that's far beyond what the planning board can impose.
I'm asking Attorney Nazarella, I'm trying to work with you, not against you.
Well, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to clarify what the law is. That's just not something that's appropriate for a planning board to request.
That is, Mr. Nasrallah is correct. It's the road and the utilities and the frontage and, additional things, are nice.
Right. And we're
Because,
trying to be, we're all trying to play nice in the sandbox.
because
here.
you're
I was
asking
just
for an
asking.
extra, you're asking for a waiver because you're extending the street.
Madam
And I realize that there's benefit to us and benefit to you for doing that.
Madam Chair, I believe, I don't know if it was part of the submittal package, but Mr. Kennedy does have a letter from a hydrogeologist about the runoff from the well, the overflow from the well. Did you get a copy of that?
It's
Jason, you
in the
have that letter, correct?
conservation packet.
yeah, we had that when we were at conservation, and to what the previous resident said, all of this information is public knowledge. That's why they're notified, so that they can go to the town hall and look at the plans. That's part of our process, the legal due diligence that we have to do. So we have provided a lot of opportunity to have these plans reviewed. And I have
Okay.
hired these professionals that earn their living by designing the roads, the drainage. They are not just shooting off the hip. This is what they do to provide for their families. I feel like we've addressed a lot of these items.
I'm comfortable with the stormwater and the surface water runoff situation. It's the groundwater that I have no understanding of and control of. And I'm just saying that to the board members. And I don't know who would.
Well, I think that that letter from the professional would shed some light on that. No, Jason? He basically states that how much water is coming out of that overflow. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 gallons a day. And it hasn't changed.
No.
And it has not changed in years. It's pretty constant.
But we address that in conservation and.
Right, but I think to assuage the planning board members, I mean, you know, that's a letter that might help.
And just for the record, it wasn't my idea on the raised ranches. It was yours, Jason, and I thought it was a good one. Okay.
Yeah, I think I think it was just the way it was worded, Madam Chair, where you said, you know, no blasting if there was raised ranches. And I think Jason's saying, I can't guarantee that there's not going to be any blasting because we don't know what's out there yet.
That's correct.
And I do want to point out, I'm answering a message online about the city engineer taking a look at it. You know, this had been reviewed by the Conservation Commission, which had an independent third-party beta engineering take a look at this. Primarily how it affected the stormwater in the wetlands, or excuse me, the water in the wetlands. But it will need to go back for a stormwater permit, and that is before the city engineer, and so it will have more review at that point in time.
Okay, good. So that's how that gets addressed. When
Mhm.
earlier we said we didn't know how the study would be done. That is it right there.
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, the only thing I was concerned about and why I expressed myself, I have seen in the past when boards go a little beyond with good intent, but go beyond the borderline, it's possible to run into contradictory rulings between one board or the other board. For what the ZBA already made rulings, Concon made rulings, we're going to go before stormwater. If we start getting contradictory rulings, it becomes a circular firing squad amongst ourselves in the boards, and that's what I'm trying to prevent.
Okay.
And I also would, submit, we rely on the letter and findings of the hydrologist, a scientific expert who made a ruling, who made a determination. And just to add a little lightness to the whole conversation, reminds me of the statement made by Otto von Werner, who worked under President Kennedy, developing the NASA moonshot. And he once said, one scientific experiment is far greater than 1,000 opinions. And I think that's where we are at this point in time. Let's rely on the experts.
Oh, boy. Madam Chair, if we're going, I don't know if you're going to move forward with this or not, but one thing I would recommend is that before they go to the Stormwater Authority, that we determine where the intermittent stream stops as it goes south on Arthur, or excuse me, west on Arthur, and how that water from the intermittent stream either enters the stormwater system or where it goes, because it doesn't just disappear.
All right, that was a lot. I got part of that down, Evan. I hope you are taking good notes. So let me just ask if Michelle Dubois, she still wants to speak because she was going to go after me. But nothing that we've already heard.
She was going to speak after you. She wasn't going to go after you necessarily.
Well, I was just finishing what I was saying and then she was. up
Right,
next.
right.
Right.
Okay, so Representative Dubois.
Well, I respect your time and I respect Chairwoman Gonzalez and all the work that everybody's put onto this. In the comments, I just am Michelle Dubois, I live on Bank Street, right down the street from this project. I'm asking the members of the board to deny any and all requests for waivers before you this evening. I think there's a waiver for an extension of the roadway and a waiver for some dead end thing. Whatever waivers you have before you, I'm asking you to deny them. I'm also asking that if this does get postponed and you don't vote on it this evening, that you get an independent analysis from the city, the engineer, as to what different water issues are at play. I think there are some questions I have, and I'm gonna follow up with him myself. It's nothing political at all. This is what public service is, in case you didn't know, Jason. And so that is all I have to say this evening. I ask that you deny the waivers, and I thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Um,
And just to
Thank
remind
you.
the board, the waivers, just the dead end extension to 1,300 feet, correct? And the sidewalk on one side only of the cul-de-sac.
Yes. And to the board, this project does not go forward without the 700-foot dead end extension.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to address what Morella said, there is no regulation, there is no law that requires the sprinklers. But when we were confronted with the two cul-de-sacs on the west side, we were asked to investigate, and we determined that our answer on cul-de-sacs being extended past the 700-foot rule, which was made long ago, would be that any new house would be sprinkled with residential sprinklers. The cost really isn't that bad. I think the developer on the west side has found it not a bad option whatsoever, but that's the fire department's stance on giving the waiver to extend the road past the 700 feet.
I remember those projects on the west
And-
side. Thank you.
And just as a reminder for the public who's listening, when it's a commercial development, all your fire protection is in iron pipe. And in this case, for residential, under a certain number of square footage, and Eddie, please correct me if I'm wrong, it can be a PEX type tubing.
Correct. It could be a plastic tubing. It can be included in the regular plumbing of the house. It can be run off a tank and not the domestic water. There's many options to look at, but it's all under one particular NFPA standard.
Yeah, but it's not billions of dollars.
No, it's not.
All right, so gonna close the public public part of this and move back to the planning board members. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, we're gonna need help here on this one with the staff, because I just feel like, my opinion, we're gonna need to continue this, but we need to be clear why we're continuing it, so that way the applicant and his legal counsel and the engineers know where we're going with this. And I think it's for the best of the board and for the city to do that, but we're gonna need help with the staff on what's going to be required moving forward on a continuance, because there's been a lot of things that have gone. I feel like I've just gone through a 2-hour tech meeting. So,
Same.
Evan, I
that's my
hope you've been
opinion.
taking notes. Could you fill in? Just, I've been chatting and not noting.
Because I don't want to just say we continue this for the sake of continuing, because there's a lot of opposition and maybe some unclear information on it. So we got to be real clear on that, and in fairness to both sides. That's my opinion.
I would agree with that, Larry. This seems to be, we've talked about just about everything. And I think we're at the middle of the road right here where we need, solid clarification on the items that stand out the most, obviously.
Which are just, we all want to be on the same page, so if we could
Evan?
narrow it down.
Evan, could you give him the list?
Well, I wrote everything down that they were talking about as conditions, but I'm not sure if this is like clarification for next time. We talked
Well,
about the swales and infiltration systems, the pipe, sprinklers, but I'm not sure, I
I
guess.
think we've agreed to all of those.
Right, I'm not sure, I guess what they can do to the plan between this meeting
Well,
and next
that's-
meeting that
that's-
will
That's
satisfy.
my question.
Rob, I thought the water items like the drainage were going to be addressed with stormwater. I mean, we're
Yeah,
adding
correct.
homes to the end of this road.
Yeah.
It's not a
Evan,
huge impact. I am not doing 40 houses. I'm not doing a big commercial property. There are so many other options. This is a minimal impact compared to other options. There's two.
Okay,
I don't, it sounds like I'm putting in a mall.
Ex-
I mean,
that's
Evan,
that's
can
my
you
hand
please
up. That's not a staff.
Not only for the board members, but also for the community. Could you just review what's going to happen at the Brockton Storm Water Ordinance meeting? That's really where they're going to do the validation of the water.
That's, yeah, everything to do with the drains, everything, drainage, everything to do basically where stormwater, when it rains, where that water goes and ends up. Has
So-
to,
So,
So that's,
Madam Chair?
that's not what we're approving, and that's not what we're saying is good. So that the community and both Larry and Jim also understand that's not in our hands.
yeah, that's a
Right,
little
Madam-
bit out of, go ahead, Rob.
oh, I'm sorry. While this project is going to have to go through the Stormwater Authority for its stormwater permit, and that, of course, should be a condition of any approval. I think the one reason we would want to continue this to the January meeting, and given the fact that nobody's going to be digging anything anyway in January and December, or December and January, is to get some sort of statement out of the city engineer about the groundwater.
We did hire a hydrologist that we provided documentation to the town regarding the water table. This was at the conservation meeting. Greg, you could probably pull that up on the screen.
Yeah, I say we look at it.
That's,
Well-
I don't,
Well,
I
the,
say we
the
continue
neighbors,
it and hear it from the city engineer. And earlier when I asked if there was such a study that could be done, I was told no. And now you're saying you hired a hydrologist, whatever you just said.
hydrologist, yes.
Okay, so now, earlier there wasn't anyone to do a study, but now you said you hired someone, so now I'm really confused. So I think continuing this and hearing it from the city engineer would be,
I mean, it's 30 days. I'd like to have Chike look at that. We've addressed all the other issues. It's really the groundwater that is standing out there. And that, I'm not an engineer. I can't answer that.
so we can't get any clearer than that.
So if we provide Chike with the letter that Jason has from the hydrogeologist, and Chike gives his opinion, I mean, is that the goal that we're going towards? Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Not as a opinion or a clarification confirming that
Right.
it's not going to be detrimental
Yeah, okay,
levels, water levels.
His
to the
professional
neighbors.
opinion.
right.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion to continue?
Motion to continue.
Second,
Okay, roll call, Larry Hassan,
yes.
Jim Sweeney,
Yes.
Tony Gonzalez, yes.
Thank you, board, for your time tonight. I know it went really late. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
So,
Oh my God, it's
I'm,
We have a
funny.
date? Do we have a date?
yeah, January
January 19th.
January
19th.
19th? Okay,
But this also includes this like 1 through 8 that we just talked about.
yes,
Okay,
Those are conditions, right?
yes, yeah. No, we're aware of those.
so Evan, and help me here, Rob, if because I didn't take shorthand. The broken drain system, but first go to conservation to Megan. Infiltration drains, sprinkler, the 2 houses. Something about drainage off the roofs.
Yeah, that's the same thing as the infiltration, Madam Chair.
Infiltration.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Fancy language. The abandonment of the ridge to preserve the trees, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rob, you said something about determining when something stops and enters. I can't even read my own writing.
The intermittent
Where
stream.
the intermittent stream ends downstream.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, and I think the staff had already made a few notes about making sure the applicant will still go through and provide the documentation on the declassification of the well with the Mass DEP. I think that was like
Yeah.
one.
Evan, you got that?
I'm sure
I
that
do.
the staff can provide this information. We don't have to go, do we have to go through all this right now that they'll provide this information? So we'll have it on the next meeting.
Yeah,
You'll
this
have
is
it
all
in the
recorded,
minutes.
so we can go back and
Right.
grab the actual wording from all this and prepare it.
Yeah, maybe we get a list from you, Evan, before
Sure.
sometime this week or something.
One point of clarification, if I may, to Deputy Chief Williams. Does the request for the sprinkled houses dependent or independent on whether or not there's a fire hydrant in the area?
No, it has nothing to do with the fire hydrant, Phil. It's the length of the extra length of the street.
Yeah, but if you have a fire hydrant there, well, I don't understand the purpose of the sprinkled, so you have access to addressing an issue if it arises. I'm trying to figure out the rationale for the.
Well, the sprinkler will put out the fire before Eddie gets there.
No, they're
Hopefully.
pretty fast.
It's designed to get people out of the house in time. And I don't know what the water flow is on top of the, I think it would not be that great on top of the hill, if you will. So we may have to stretch lines in from Sawtell Avenue, where it's more level and we'll have more pressure. It's cross-fed there, and that's why I was inquiring about the cross-fed, trying to cross-feed it up from the other side that we determined we probably couldn't do. So the longer you push water, the higher you push it up, the less velocity you're going to get and the less pressure you're going to have.
Thank you.
All right. Think that's
That's it for this subject.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thanks for your time. Have a good night.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
That was the it?
Larry Hassan,
yes.
James Sweeney,
Yes.
Tony Gonzalez, yes. Good night, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Good
everyone.
night.
Good night.
Rob, before you close the actual Zoom, does the questions in the Q&A get saved? Can we export those somehow?
Let me.
I can take screenshots.
Okay, yeah, can you do that, Isaiah? Just so they don't get lost, because I'm not sure if.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah.
No problem.
And then let us know when you're all set. Awesome, thanks,
All
Isaiah.
set. Thank you, sir. Good night, everybody.
Good night.